compared to the tree bark's tough, solid defenses, the tree of life's insides were relatively much weaker. In fact, there were even a great number of sap-filled vessels. Meng Lei had no way of knowing whether the vessels were used for transporting moisture and nutrients or not, but these spacious and convenient vessels that led everywhere certainly provided him great convenience. Weaving through them was extremely convenient. What fragrant sap! I wonder if it's potable. Meng Lei communicated with Aves while he weaved through the vessels. This sap is the tree of life's life essence. It contains a rich, surging life force and is an invaluable treasure. Well, Aves said, but before you kill the tree of life, I'd suggest that you not drink it. On the off chance that it contains the tree of life's divinity, then it would be poison itself. I can't drink it, but I can at least take it away with me, right? I'm a penniless pauper that urgently needs to replenish his wealth now. Gurgle Meng Lei brought out a spatial ring and turned into a hard-working little bee as he furiously stored the sap into the ring. Gurgle, he filled a spatial ring to the brim. Gurgle, the second spatial ring was filled to the brim. Gurgle, and then the third, the fourth, and the fifth. When he reached the sixth spatial ring, Meng Lei was somewhat astonished. This spatial ring can store so much. It actually isn't full yet when I've been filling it with the sap for so long? Just how big is the space inside? Meng Lei quickly released some spiritual power to check the capacity, upon which he couldn't help but gasp. It's so huge. It's pretty much a freaking continent. President, have you ever seen a spatial ring that spans dozens of kilometers wide? Is it that big? Aves was rather astonished. That's no longer a spatial ring, but a spatial magic device of half-divine weapon level. I dare say that an existential plane fragment is sealed within that spatial ring for sure. Otherwise, it couldn't possibly hold such a huge space. This is President Fred's ring. Meng Lei couldn't help being moved when he took a close look at the spatial ring's design. President Fred was actually willing to lend him even a spatial ring of half-divine weapon level. What kind of level of trust was that? Looks like your Academy President trusts you very much. Aves was full of praises. An existential plane fragment is an extremely precious treasure because it'll only form when a material plane is destroyed. It's very hard for a Saint Domain to get their hands on it in most typical situations. An existential plane fragment measuring 2 to 3 kilometers wide is worth hundreds, even up to 1,000 laws of nature origin crystals. You can do the math yourself on how precious that spatial ring of President Fred's is. I understand now. Meng Lei nodded silently. Let's go. We must hurry and continue on our journey. Follow the life essence. The vitality core is the origin of a botanical lifeform's life essence. The nearer you are to the vitality core, the life essence usually also becomes richer. All right? That goddamn human. The tree of life was boiling mad. Never did it expect things to develop to such a point. It was a great half-deity, yet not only did it fail to kill a Saint Domain, but it had even allowed him to enter its body. A disgrace. This was an extraordinary disgrace. What infuriated the Tree of Life even further was that it could clearly sense that Meng Lei was currently furiously plundering its life essence. That was its life essence. Audare Meng Lei. I must kill him. I must kill that bastard. Only with his blood can my fury be vented. Boom! A divinity personification formed in an instant and descended out of nowhere before Meng Lei. It was actually a miniature version of the Tree of Life except with legs, arms, a mouth, a nose, and eyes. Damn you, human! The divinity personification's glowering eyes glared furiously at Meng Lei. How it wished it could dismember him into a million pieces. What the hell? Meng Lei did an emergency brake at once. That's the personification of the Tree of Life's divinity. There's no need to fear it. Well, Aves said as a reminder, a divinity personification holds less than even 0.0001% of the original form's power. Release the God-slaying spear and kill it. All right. The God-slaying spear appeared out of thin air. Meng Lei hurled it forward forcefully, upon which the divinity personification snorted icily and easily evaded the attack with a flash. Turn around. With a mental command from Meng Lei, the God-slaying spear reversed its course at once. The divinity personification was unable to react in time, resulting in the god-slaying spear piercing right through its head. Then, something shocking happened. Buzz! Dazzling violet lightning erupted from the god-slaying spear. Then, a terrifying suction force emerged from it and started to absorb the divinity personification with a vengeance. Gurgle, the divinity personification, began to shrivel up visibly. In the span of a few breaths, it was completely absorbed by the spear, turning into a bunch of green light participles and dissipating. What's going on? Meng Lei looked stupefied. It's absorbing the power of divinity. All Amos couldn't help but gasp. To think the god-slaying spear can actually absorb the power of divinity. Absorbing the power of divinity? Meng Lei stared at the spot where the divinity personification had dissipated. A huge jolt couldn't help but go through him. No, this is no longer just plain absorption, but plundering. Well, Amos murmured absent-mindedly. To be able to fully absorb the tree of life's divinity personification in just the span of a short 2 to 3 breaths. Of what level is that divine weapon? Of what level? No one knew. After absorbing the divinity personification into itself, the god-slaying spear circled about as though it hadn't had enough yet. Only then did it return to Meng Lei with utmost reluctance. What a great treasure! To think it can even do something like that! Meng Lei stroked the spear's icy-cold shaft as he marveled. He didn't get overly hung up on the god-slaying spear's abilities. As the saying went, whether it is a black cat or a white cat doesn't matter. All cats that can catch mice are good cats. Meng Lei didn't give two hoots about the reason why the god-slaying spear was able to absorb the power of divinity. All he knew was that this additional ability of the god-slaying spear was definitely something positive. Or at least it came right into play at the moment. Let's see how you're gonna fight me. Tree of Life. Meng Lei let out an icy laugh, and then he continued on his way. What exactly was that just now? My divinity personification has actually been absorbed. The Tree of Life was dumbfounded. As a powerful botanical life form, it had always been the one plundering, absorbing, exploiting others, and using other life forms as food and nutrients all this time. As the saying went, what goes around, comes around. It was now its turn to be absorbed by others. It certainly didn't feel good. In fact, the feeling could even be said to be frustrating. On top of that, the frustration wasn't even the most important thing here. The key was that the Tree of Life had been presented with information that made it shiver in fear. This was because what the god-slaying spear had absorbed wasn't blood, tissue fluid, life force, or magic power. Rather, it was the power of divinity. It fed on the power of divinity. That was simply too frightening. As a half-deity that had only just achieved half-deification through faith, the Tree of Life had only taken a tiny little step forward on the road to deification. It had neither kindled the divine fire nor had it formed a state of divinity yet, much less establish a divine nation. To put it nicely, the Tree of Life was no different from a little newbie that had only just embarked on the road to deification. To put it bluntly, it was the weakest and wussiest half-deity. How weak was it? Without kindling the divine flame, one wouldn't be able to convert the endless, infinite power of faith into the power of divinity. This was too fatal of a flaw. What was the power of divinity? Power of divinity was electricity, fuel, an energy source, a driving force. It was the rice and pork that one ate every day. If a human were iron, then rice would be steel. If one skipped a meal, they would be drained of energy. This was the case for humans as well as deities. Wouldn't a half-deity without the power of divinity be the weakest god? Then, in the songs and tales frequently sung by bards where humans managed to slay gods, the ones that were slew were usually gods like that. Of course, as a half-deity, the Tree of Life was nevertheless still able to create the power of divinity. However, without the divine fire as a tool, the creation process's efficiency was appallingly low. Every drop of power of divinity required an extremely long amount of time. Thus, one shouldn't be fooled by the Tree of Life's thick and sturdy trunk and incredible height and size. It really didn't possess that many drops of power of divinity. To put it bluntly, not only was it the weakest half-deity, but it was also the poorest half-deity. Precisely because it was poor, how the Tree of Life wished it could use every drop of power of divinity as if it had the capacity of 3. How would it possibly have extra power of divinity lying around to squander and waste? After all, its father was no Li Gang 1 or little big brother Ma 2, much less the heavenly emperor or the creator. Therefore, how could the Tree of Life possibly not be filled with fear when faced with a weapon that could consume one's power of divinity? What kind of weapon is it, exactly? To think it can actually consume the power of divinity? Could it be a divine weapon? And that hammer, too. It's even sturdier than my body. It has to be at least a half-divine weapon. That bastard! Why does a saint domain like him have that many divine weapons? Is there even any justice in this world? The Tree of Life felt terribly frustrated. How venerable and how powerful was a great half-deity like it. Yet, it was still an impoverished pauper even to this day. On the other hand, Meng Lei instead had divine weapon after divine weapon. How infuriating! What is he trying to do? That location. Could he be? The Tree of Life's countenance changed greatly. It had suddenly realized what Meng Lei wanted to do. Damn! His goal isn't the life essence but my vitality core. I have to stop him. I have to. Not only does he hold 2 divine weapons in his possession, but he's even ridiculously strong. Once I allow him to go near my vitality core, I'll be in great danger. Divinity personification. Upon realizing the severity of the situation, the Tree of Life was no longer miserly with its power of divinity. It created an even stronger divinity personification and charged toward Meng Lei at all costs. Here to deliver food again? At the sight of the divinity personification that had appeared once more, Meng Lei threw the god-slaying spear over again without any hesitation. The divinity personification had come prepared this time. It easily dodged the god-slaying spear, and then it unleashed its skill. God's domain. A terrifying energy wave descended and froze Meng Lei to the ground. Divine technique. Deprivation of life. Meng Lei gave an icy chuckle. Then, a great force erupted from all over him, and he knocked away the shackles of God's domain. The hammer of destruction appeared in his hand, and he smashed it ruthlessly at the divinity personification. Humph! This is home ground for me here. How can I possibly let you attack me? The divinity personification snorted and evaded the hammer of destruction's attacks. To its surprise, however, the god-slaying spear actually ambushed it from the back and, with a splurt, pierced through its head. So what even if it's your home ground? Meng Lei sneered. I can kill you insidiously with a pincer attack all the same. Buzz! Lightning dazzled brightly on the god-slaying spear's surface. Then, as though drinking sweet dew, it began to absorb the divinity personification once more. You bastard! The divinity personification roared furiously. Nevertheless, amid utmost indignation, it was ultimately still cleanly and totally absorbed by the god-slaying spear, leaving behind not even a trace of itself. Let's continue forward. Meng Lei pushed on continuously. Boom! The third divinity personification descended. It was obviously an even more solid manifestation than the previous 2. Its aura was also more ferocious, and its divine power even more fearsome. The Tree of Life had clearly invested heavily in it. However, this time round, without even needing Meng Lei's command, the god-slaying spear that had gotten addicted to the taste shot forward by itself, chasing after the divinity personification and chomping down on it. What the hell? The Tree of Life was so frightened that it darted about everywhere. It didn't have the leisure to attack Meng Lei anymore. Here's my chance. It wasn't attacking Meng Lei, but that didn't mean that he was going to let it off. Upon finding an opportune moment, Meng Lei smashed the hammer over. Bam! The divinity personification was utterly stunned by the blow. Ah! The god-slaying spear took advantage of the opportunity and impaled the divinity personification's buttocks in one strike. Third divinity personification down. Meng Lei chuckled, and then he darted swiftly toward the vitality core. Almost there. The life essence is becoming richer and richer. The vitality core must be nearby. Hurry! Smoo! Find it. Well, Amos was incredibly agitated. So much so that even his voice was somewhat shaking. Meng Lei broke into another mad dash. Boom! Dazzling light suddenly erupted ahead. The light was so piercing that Meng Lei couldn't even really open his eyes. He had actually arrived at a massive hollow zone. It was hollowed out. The area ahead was straight up hollowed out. And in the center of the hollowed-out zone, a golden sun-like bead hung suspended. Spanning 100 meters wide, the surface was covered in mysterious magic runes. It gave off a surging, gushing sense of vigor, as if one would extend their lifespan by 1,000 years just by taking a breath of it. Root-like strands extended from the golden bead, connecting to every area of the Tree of Life. They led everywhere, crisscrossing and intertwining as though one's neural networks, yet also like a sheep's intestinal tracts. Dense and packed, innumerable, and infinite. The Vitality Core. That's the Tree of Life's Vitality Core. The most dangerous and most critical moment has come. Meng Lei, you must be careful of its counterattacks. A moment of carelessness will doom you to hell. Of course, should you succeed, then congratulations, you shall achieve the great feat of slaying a deity, though just a half-deity. Deity. Perishing together, goodbye Meng Lei. Quickly, hurry and leave this place. At the moment that Meng Lei found the Vitality Core, the golden shield enveloping the outside disappeared with a boom. Everyone who was trapped within was overjoyed, and they seized the opportunity to flee. The Tree of Life didn't stop them. They fled a long way out in one go before they finally came to a stop. That was close. We're finally out. That was really too close. A moment of carelessness, and we'd all have been finished. We're still in a passable condition. It's Prince Barbarossa and the others who are in for it. Prince Barbarossa and the other 100-odd contestants' appearances were all shriveled up, and their faces filled with wrinkles, making them look even older than an 800-years-old elderly man. The strong ones were still breathing faintly, barely hanging on. All of them were Saint Domains. On the other hand, the weaker ones, all 9th grade, were deader than dead. How are they? The golden colossal dragon person barked the question with a grave look on his countenance. Captain, out of 108 contestants, only 36 of them are barely managing to hang in there. The rest are all dead. Bastard! With an awful look on his face, the golden colossal dragon person swore. That goddamn evil deity. To think it's killed so many of the Empire's elites. How utterly hateful. Humph! Isn't all of this Meng Lei's fault? One of the contestants snorted icily and said, If it weren't for him, why would we be in such a predicament? Exactly. It's all Meng Lei's fault. He has to take responsibility for the 72 contestants' deaths. So many contestants have indirectly died by his hand. It's no different from him killing them himself. He's no longer qualified to participate in the competition. He should be disqualified. That's right. He should be disqualified. The golden colossal dragon person gave the contestants a long, deep look before he said, At this point of the competition, all of you are the only ones left now. Whether or not the competition goes on is dependent on His Majesty's decision. Upon hearing that, the contestants' countenances changed slightly, becoming dismayed at once. I understand. OL President. Meng Lei took a deep breath and primed his body to its best condition. The god-slaying spear quietly appeared in his hand. Then he leaped into the air and hurled it forward forcefully. Go, god-slaying spear! Whoosh! Lightning weaved around the spear, and the god-slaying spear turned into a stream of light that shot toward the 100 meters wide golden bead. God's domain! A roar that contained endless fury rang out. The space was locked down in an instant. The god-slaying spear's speed reduced dramatically until it ultimately became imprisoned and stopped where it was. You lowly and cunning human! A gigantic human visage appeared in the sky. Its mouth opened and closed as it emanated endless murderous intent and immense wrath. How dare you seek to slay a great deity? How utterly audacious of you! I'm going to rip you into a million pieces.
Divine technique, emprisonnement.
Buzz. Power of divinity even more fearsome than God's domain swept toward Meng Lei. Since he had been prepared for it, Meng Lei's form flashed about again, and then he vanished altogether. Old tree demon, your divine techniques are certainly fearsome. Once it hits me, I'm finished. Meng Lei's voice resounded in the surroundings as he went on. But casting these techniques requires time, and so does hitting me with them. As long as I'm on guard against it, what can you do to me? His voice echoed in the void, but his form was nowhere in sight at all. Hence the divine technique naturally also missed its target. The tree of life was so furious that it was screaming, "You goddamn little thief! Get out here! Get out here! Get out there? As you wish." Meng Lei abruptly appeared in front of the god-slaying spear, grabbed it in one smooth motion, and then he vanished right away. By the time he reappeared, he was already on the other side of the golden bead. Break! With the god-slaying spear in hand, Meng Lei pumped all the strength in him into it and jabbed it forward ruthlessly. Slash! The god-slaying spear ripped through the air, emitting a sharp and shrill screech as it did so, and stabbed the golden bead. Clang! It was as though the god-slaying spear were stabbing against a firm, solid metal board, spraying sparks everywhere. Apart from that, it actually hadn't managed to impale the golden bead. What the? It's that solid. Meng Lei was shocked. This is normal. Magic cores are where all of a magical beast's essence is stored, Amos explained. Even low-grade magical beasts' magic cores are incredibly hard, let alone an old half-deity demonic tree, like the tree of life that has lived for an immeasurably long time. That's true. Realization dawned on Meng Lei. Bastard! The tree of life roared. Divine technique. Elemental storm. Boom! An endless amount of wood elements sprayed forth and turned into innumerable formidable tornadoes. Each tornado's size might not be that big, but all of them were imbued with the power of divinity. The might they carried was countless times stronger than typical tornadoes. Should any hit him, while Meng Lei had no idea whether or not they could penetrate his defenses, what he did know was that with his current short and small body, he'd definitely be sucked into them. When that happened, wouldn't he become a trapped mouse? How can I let things go according to your plan? Meng Lei began to weave through the innumerable tornadoes. No matter how the storms howled, slashed, or cut, they actually couldn't even touch Meng Lei at all. The god-slaying rat bloodline's powerful superiority in speed was fully displayed at this moment. Running around isn't going to kill the old tree demon. I have to think of something, a way that I can kill it. That's it. There's the hammer of destruction. Meng Lei appeared at the golden bead again with the spear in his left hand and the hammer in his right. He pressed the tip of the spear against the golden bead and swung the hammer down on it. Boom! Carrying with it a great, vast force, the hammer of destruction struck the god-slaying spear's end heavily, causing a great force to course through the spear. Crack! With a crisp, melodious crack, the god-slaying spear's tip actually pierced through the solid and sturdy golden bead's defenses to make a small opening. Ha ha ha! It works! Meng Lei was immensely excited. He didn't hold back at all with the Qilin arm one that he had painstakingly trained for so many years. Amid loud collisions, the god-slaying spear was embedded bit by bit into the golden bead. In the blink of an eye, almost half of the tip had gone in. Ah! The tree of life let out a shrill cry that sounded just like the wailing of vengeful spirits from hell, making one's scalp tingle and shivers to go through them. Hurry! Step on it! Kill that bastard! An incredibly stimulated Amos cheered Meng Lei on. Break! 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 Meng Lei let out a long howl, displaying even the disorder-splitting wind hammer technique one that he'd painstakingly practiced for many years. Right away, deafening clings and clangs rang out, and sparks flew everywhere.
Smon, break.
Ha! Each of the tree of life screams was louder than the previous, endless and eternal like the gushing rivers, yet also like the overflowing yellow river, beyond control once the floodgates open. Crack! At last, amid crisp cracks that sounded incomparably wonderful, a thin crack appeared in the blazing sun-like golden bead's surface. The crack became wider and wider, longer and longer. Like a spider web, the crack spread outward in every direction. In the blink of an eye, They had spread throughout the whole golden bead. Here's my chance. Meng Lei's blood boiled with passion as he leaped high into the air and swung the hammer of destruction down. I shall decide the universe's fate with one strike of the hammer. Break! Boom! The incomparably heavy hammer of destruction contained a fearsome might. Added to this Meng Lei's incredible strength, everything erupted the instant it came into contact with the golden bead. Crack! At last, it broke. The enormous golden bead broke into half from the middle. Ah! A scream that sounded like the wailing and crying of thousands of vengeful spirits rang out, hysterical and insane. It was the Tree of Life. I did it! OL President, I did it! Meng Lei panted heavily with a look of excitement and stimulation on his face. Go! Hurry and go! Leave this place immediately! OL Amos shouted. The Tree of Life is doomed, but you have to be careful of its final blow before it dies. Don't worry, I know.
Meng Lei didn't dare darli.
He took off at once. Leave? Do you really think you can go after you've injured me to this extent? A cold, imposing voice that contained great murderous intent and endless hatred rang out. Then, a small golden tree that dazzled a radiant gold abruptly appeared in the empty zone. It was a tree but looked more like a human, more so than even its divinity personification. That's... A huge jolt went through Meng Lei. That's the Tree of Life's soul. Or rather, its divine spirit. Well, Amos' voice shook as he said, it has already attained half-deification, so its soul has metamorphosed into a soul of higher class that's nearly immortal, the divine spirit. Immortal?
Meng Lei shook violently.
Doesn't that mean that it can't die? Theoretically, yes. Amos nodded. Who cares? Let's just go. With even a moment's pause, Meng Lei continued his mad dash. You've broken my vitality core and destroyed my divine body, thoroughly cutting off my path to divinity. I'll fight to the death with you. The crazed golden little tree charged right up to Meng Lei in an instant and blocked his path. What the hell? It's so quick. A shocked Meng Lei immediately changed his course and ran off again. D. As the little golden tree screamed, its divine spirit's surging power morphed into a hammer that swung ruthlessly toward Meng Lei. Look out! That's an attack on one's divine spirit. Amos hastily shouted a warning. But just how fast was a divine spirit attack? He'd only just shouted the warning when the divine spirit attack reached Meng Lei, disregarding his body to smash forcefully onto his soul. Ugh! As though he'd been struck by lightning, Meng Lei threw up a mouthful of blood. His mind buzzed as he blanked out completely. A single strike alone had gravely wounded him. To think your soul is actually this weak and fragile. At the sight of that, the Tree of Life became rather hysterical as it wailed. Oh, the resentment in me. If I had realized this sooner, how would I have landed myself in this state? Bastard. The Tree of Life went even more berserk and launched an even more raging divine spirit attack. It's all over. A tragic smile appeared on Meng Lei's lips. His spiritual power had only just broken through the 1 billion point mark. In other words, it had barely reached Saint Domain. Even if he used all his remaining wealth to enhance his soul, it was far from enough. The Tree of Life spirit was a half-deity's soul. Its very first attack had already wounded him gravely. How was he supposed to withstand the second blow? Am I actually going to die here? Meng Lei was unwilling to accept the fact. Boom! At this critical moment, a dazzling red light suddenly erupted. Meng Lei looked up in astonishment to see a big, tall, and majestic figure standing in front of him. Fiery red scales and fiery red wings. Fiery red horns and a fiery red body. It was a pure-blooded fire dragon. OL President? Meng Lei exclaimed in a low voice. He was too familiar with OL Amos' aura. It was OL Amos' aura. After being with you for such a long time, it's time I should leave. The pure-blooded fire dragon turned to him and gave him a kindly smile. You should know that I had remained single for my entire life. In your words, I'm a lifelong bachelor. My biggest regret is that I hadn't left behind any descendants. Fortunately, I met you. watching you grow, watching you break through, watching you come all this way. It has let me experience what it's like to enjoy a life of leisure in old age as one plays with their grandchildren, as well as the joy of guiding the younger generation. This is something that I've never experienced before, and also the happiest moments of my life in the last 20,000 years. Alas, all good things must come to an end. The fate between us has reached the end, and this day has finally come. With a hint of gratification and comfort at the corners of his eyes, old Amos said, "To be honest, brat, I've known from the very beginning that you're not a descendant of the Crocs, so there's no need for you to be sad after my death, nor do you need to restore the Crocs' glory and magnificence. From the start to the end, this clan had never been glorious before. So, go on your journey happily and create your own glory. I will watch over you quietly in the other world. Next is the thing that you care about the most, my inheritance. All of my inheritance is in my dragon remains in the magical beast forest. You can look for it after you leave this place. Although it isn't much, they should still be of some help to you. Lastly, haven't you been curious all this time about how strong I was during my peak? Here's a piece of good news. Your wish has come true. You shall be the first, as well as the last, to see my strongest power." With a bright smile, the flames around old Amos suddenly turned into a dazzling golden yellow. A fire dragon had turned into a golden dragon. Boom! Majestic divine power emanated from him and enveloped the whole place in it, sweeping through the heavens and earth. Divine spirit, ignite! Blazing flames suddenly burst forth from the golden dragon. As though flames that had been doused with petrol, his divine power instantly surged. What's going on? The tree of life's countenance changed dramatically. To be able to kill a half-deity before I die. I have no more regrets. This is farewell, brat. Live on well. With a kindly and benevolent expression on his face, old Amos took one last look at Meng Lei. Then, he turned into a golden stream of light that shot toward the tree of life's divine spirit, breaking into the most radiant, most dazzling brilliance at the very last moment, much like a comet shooting across the sky. No! No! Two half-deities, little sister has come. Meng Lei took the brunt of the impact. He was sent flying. His eyes rolled, and he fell unconscious. When Meng Lei woke up again, he didn't know how long it had been. It was all empty and silent around him. Even a needle drop would be heard. The small golden tree had disappeared. Amos had disappeared. Everything had disappeared. Only the vitality core, broken into two pieces, and countless vessels in disarray were left. Meng Lei got up quickly, ignoring his dizziness, and yelled frantically, "OL President? OL President! OL President, come out!" There was no response at all. "OL President, come out! OL Amos, get out here quickly!" Meng Lei shook the god-slaying spear hard, wanting to shake the old man out of it. It was from this spear that OL Amos had emerged before. Unfortunately, this time, OL Amos didn't come out anymore. He extended his spiritual power inside but could detect nothing. OL Amos had disappeared forever.
No.
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 Meng Lei shook his head, unable to accept this reality. In the past, Meng Lei would always feel irritated at the old man's non-stop chattering in his ears. But now that OL Amos had disappeared, and he couldn't hear his nagging voice anymore, Meng Lei's heart felt a piercing pain. "I'm the president of Fire Dragon Magic Academy. My name is Amos Croc. You unfilial descendant. Why would I get such an unfilial youngster like you? Brat, how come you've broken through again?" Meng Lei, live well. Scenes of their past interactions kept replaying. OL Amos's voice, tone, smile, and appearance filled Meng Lei's mind. Only now did Meng Lei realize that the elder who often scolded, criticized, and advised him had long become a person who he couldn't part with. But now, the person Meng Lei was closest to in this world had left forever. Why? Why did this happen? Meng Lei collapsed onto the ground, his tears gushing out uncontrollably. After an unknown amount of time, Meng Lei's mood recovered just slightly. He looked at the empty area and stood up. Time to leave this sorrowful place. He put away the hammer of destruction and grabbed his god-slaying spear. Meng Lei felt extremely sad. How he wished for old Amos to fly out of the god-slaying spear once again. It was a pity that what would happen every single day before was an impossible dream now. "OL President, I'm sorry." Meng Lei decisively put away the god-slaying spear, not wanting to give it a single more look. Looking at it would only make him sadder due to the memories. Collect! 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 More than 2 hours had passed when Meng Lei exited the Tree of Life. The Tree of Life still stood high, majestic, green and lush, no different from before. The only difference was that the countless golden fruits in between the leaves had disappeared. Only a handful remained scattered in between, vastly different from the numbers before. Where are the fruits? Never mind. If they are gone, let them be gone. If it were before, maybe he would be extremely angry, but now he had no mood to even be angry. Collect! He collected all of the leftover fruits before looking at the tall and majestic Tree of Life once again. Although the Tree of Life spirit had already died, Meng Lei was still raging with unappeased hatred at its empty shell. "It was you who killed OL Amos." Boom, boom, boom. Meng Lei ruthlessly bombarded the tree. The huge tree trunk was still standing tall and straight, without the slightest sign of breaking. "You bastard!" Meng Lei punched his fist onto the trunk. He felt extremely undignified and really wanted to pull it right out of the earth. "Meng Lei!" A surprised call came from behind. He saw Abe standing not far away, her face red, breathing heavily. "Abe!" Meng Lei struggled to make a slight smile. "It's so good that you are okay. I thought you—" Abe flew over. Although tears were shining in her eyes, her face was full of excitement.
"Yeah, I'm okay."
Meng Lei smiled sorrowfully, shook his head, and diverted the conversation. "You didn't leave with them? I was waiting for you to come out." Abe stared at Meng Lei. She could sense Meng Lei's fatigue and sadness. In addition, Meng Lei's eyes were red. "Meng Lei, what's wrong?" "I just lost someone close to me." Meng Lei was in a lot of pain. "Abe, I want some quietness alone." Upon saying that, Meng Lei turned to leave. However, at that moment, a wave of terrible pressure appeared. Divine power swept in all directions, and the void seemed to solidify. Two streams of light rapidly shot toward their location, and instantly they got closer. It was actually a man and a woman, an old man with black hair and black horns, and a young woman with red dragon horns. These were two half-deities of the dragon race. Meng Lei glanced at the duo and couldn't be bothered with them. He needed a good rest. The black-horned old man suddenly spoke. "You both are also the Empire's contestants?" "Yes, Elder." Abe didn't dare to neglect him and hurried to bow and answer in the affirmative. Meng Lei ignored him and directly flew toward Sokka's. This action somewhat angered the black-horned old man, and his facial expression suddenly turned dark. "Boy, stop. I'm talking to you." Meng Lei ignored him. "Elder, he's also a contestant. He is in too much grief because of the loss of a family member. Please, forgive him." Abe hurried to speak to explain for Meng Lei. "Humph." The black-horned old man snorted coldly. Though he was a bit dissatisfied, he didn't continue questioning. Instead, he looked at the tall and majestic Tree of Life. "This is the native half-deity?" The black-horned old man and the red-horned young woman's eyes flickered, and amazement showed in their eyes. Soon the two frowned, however. The divine spirit is no longer there. No more power of divinity. This native half-deity is dead? The black-horned old man looked at Abe again. "Little girl, who killed this native half-deity? It died." Abe was confused. "Of course, this native half-deity before us is only an empty shell. The spirit has long died. Naturally, it's dead," the black-horned old man said calmly. "Judging from the mess around here, there should have just been a battle here just now. Tell me, who killed it? It's really dead?" Abe's whole body shook violently. She was at a loss for words. She had been here the whole time, so if someone had killed the Tree of Life, it would most possibly be Meng Lei. But how could Meng Lei possibly have killed a half-deity? Meng Lei was just a Saint Domain expert. At that thought, Abe couldn't help but look toward Meng Lei's back profile, with shock and disbelief filling her eyes. Is Meng Lei already so strong to the degree of being able to kill a half-deity? Little girl, you can't possibly insinuate that this boy killed this native half-deity? Nonsense, the black-horned old man snorted. How weak is a mere Saint Domain warrior? How can he be compared to this native half-deity? Maybe I guessed wrongly, Abe muttered to herself. The red-horned young woman spoke. Elder Thaniel, we should investigate first. Maybe we could find some clues. All right. The two approached the Tree of Life and started scrutinizing it. The Tree of Life was so tall, yet it only took the two half-deities one moment to complete the examination. The duo was shocked at once. The red-horned young woman even disappeared right where she was. Not only the divine spirit disappeared, but the vitality core is also gone. The black-horned old man was a bit angry. The most precious part of a plant half-deity is its vitality core. My goal was exactly the vitality core. But now, the vitality core of the native half-deity actually disappeared. Isn't our trip wasted then? Whoosh! The black-horned old man suddenly turned back and fixed his gaze on Abe. His eyes were as sharp as blades as he said in a chilling voice, "Little girl, exactly who killed this native half-deity? If you lie, I will definitely not let you go easily." "Little kid, who killed it?" the red-horned young woman suddenly asked as well. She grabbed Abe's shoulder, unable to contain her emotions. "Tell me, who killed this tree?" Being stared at like this by two half-deities, especially faced with the red-horned young woman's emotional and intense gaze, Abe felt immense pressure. "I don't know." "Humph." The black-horned old man snorted and immediately turned to look at Meng Lei. He grabbed at the air and pulled Meng Lei, who had already flown off quite a distance, right back. "Boy, who killed it?" The black-horned old man yelled the question. "I killed it. You have a question." Meng Lei looked up, his tone stiff. "You killed it? You really do dare to make yourself look good? Stop joking." The black-horned old man snorted coldly. "You are just a weak Saint Domain. Who are you compared to it? Believe it or don't." Meng Lei's tone was aloof. "You?" The black-horned old man was enraged. Then the red-horned young woman spoke. Her voice was very soft and gentle, with a slight quiver. "Little guy, I checked just now. 2 remaining divine spirits were moving in the tree body. It shows that it was another half-deity who killed this tree. Tell me, have you seen that half-deity? Where did he go?" The young woman's eyes shone full of sincerity and attentiveness. Meng Lei's throat moved slightly, and a look of pain showed on his face. "He died." "Died? No, it's impossible. How could he possibly die? You lied. You lied. How dare you lie to me?" The red-horned young woman's breathing stopped for a moment, and instantly, she turned hysterical. A terrible surge of divine power spread from her body, pressing on Meng Lei so badly that he felt unable to breathe. "Tell me, where on earth is he?" "He's dead. He's dead." Meng Lei's eyes reddened, and his voice was hoarse. "He sacrificed his own life to kill the Tree of Life in order to save me. He will never appear again." Boom! The red-horned young woman looked like she was struck by lightning. Her figure stumbled, and her face paled suddenly. "Amolin, what's up with you?" The red-horned young woman's abnormal behavior puzzled the black-horned old man. In his impression, Amolin had always been a person who kept all her emotions and feelings inside. She had never been like this before. "I'm fine." The red-horned young woman waved her hands slightly, took a deep breath, stared deadly hard at Meng Lei, and said slowly and emphatically, "Tell me, what was his name?" "You are called Amolin?" Meng Lei asked in a low voice. "May I know your family name?" "Croc," the red-horned young woman said with a quivering voice. "I'm called Amolin Croc." "Indeed." Meng Lei made out a dry laugh. "He was called Amos Croc." Boom! The red-horned young woman's vision blackened, and she almost collapsed on the ground. Her fragile body trembled slightly, and her shoulders quivered as she actually started crying intensely. Big brother, return to Magical Beast Forest. Farewell to Teddy. That was only expected. Father's talent in cultivating battle aura was rare in the world. My younger sister inherited his talent in cultivating battle aura and also broke into Saint Domain at the age of 70. Younger sister, after being around Ol Amos for so long, Meng Lei knew that he had a younger sister, but Ol Amos had been under the impression that his younger sister and family were long gone from this world. After all, although the life expectancy of Saint Domain experts was prolonged, it didn't mean immortality. 20,000 years was far too long of a time frame. If one didn't become a half-deity, they would eventually die. But clearly, Ol Amos had guessed wrongly. His younger sister was not only still alive, but also a half-deity. "OL President, how good it would be if you were still alive." Meng Lei closed his eyes. "You must have been really happy to reunite with your younger sister." "Big brother, I've been looking for you for the last 24,986 years. An entire 24,986 years. I thought you had died. I had finally let it go. But you suddenly appeared again. But why did it end like this? Just why did it end like this?" Amolin, the red-horned young woman, grieved even more than Meng Lei. Her hands covered her face as she wailed and cried. "Amolin, the dead can't be revived. Don't take it too hard." Daniel, the black-horned old man, sighed. As someone from a different time period, he didn't know much about Amolin's life before she had become a half-deity. He didn't expect that Amolin actually had an older brother, and this older brother was also a half-deity. It was intriguing that both siblings were half-deities. After a really long time, Amolin finally calmed down. She said with reddened eyes, "Just now you said my big brother died to save you. I want to know everything about him." "Sure." Meng Lei gave the black-horned old man and Abbe a look, and a look of hesitation showed on his face. "Follow me." Amolin waved a hand and actually brought Meng Lei to the void, where they fought the Tree of Life earlier. Ol Amos' divine spirit waves were still lingering there. "Now you may speak. I first met Ol President at the Magical Beast Ridge. At that time, he was sealed. Despite Amolin's rich knowledge and life experiences, her brother's experiences still astonished her. Of course, these experiences pained her even more. Getting accidentally killed 20,000 years ago. Getting sealed for as long as 20,000 years. Neither human nor ghost. How much torture and suffering would that be? You had better talent and more power than me. You were also infatuated with cultivation, so I believed you could surely achieve the level of half-deity before me." Amolin's heart broke. "But never in my wildest imagination would I have expected that you would experience such a thing. Who on earth killed you? Who killed you, big brother?" Sigh. Meng Lei took out the God-Slaying spear. "This is the divine weapon that sealed up Ol President. I am passing it to you now." "The weapon that killed my big brother?" Amolin grabbed the God-Slaying spear, and hatred showed in her eyes. Her divine spirit swept across the God-Slaying spear, as though looking for information about the God-Slaying spear's owner. Unfortunately, she was disappointed. The God-Slaying spear's former owner had long died, and the information left inside had also disappeared, with only Meng Lei's spiritual mark left inside. Find? Who could she possibly find? Never mind. Never mind. Keep it properly. Amolin threw the God-Slaying spear back to Meng Lei. "Any more last words from my big brother?" Meng Lei shook his head. Amolin took a breath. "Take me to this magical beast forest. I'll retrieve my big brother's dead body to bury him in the dragon graves, and allow him to accompany our father and mother." "All right." Meng Lei didn't reject her. Back outside, Amolin turned around to the tall and straight Tree of Life, and the hatred in her eyes was replaced by killing intent. Her red lips parted slightly, and one word came out. "Break!" Buzz. A terrible wave descended, and the Tree of Life, which Meng Lei couldn't bring down with all his efforts earlier, actually turned into fine dust at this moment, dissipating into the air. Splash! The dust particles suddenly became erratic, and like a tall building that had suddenly fallen, dust flew all around, and a mushroom-shaped cloud rose into the air. Elder Thaniel will leave first. Amelin grabbed Meng Lei. Her figure flashed, and they disappeared right where they were. 2 hours later, the two were already at the magical beast forest. So fast! Meng Lei was a bit astounded. From the lost continent to the magical beast forest, it had actually taken them only 2 hours. What kind of speed was this? One had to know that flying from the Fire Dragon Kingdom to Imperial City had taken them 5 days back then, but a half-deity needed less than 2 hours. The difference was evident. Roar! One beast's roar followed by another resounded, and they saw many magical beasts filling the forest, killing, wandering, hunting, resting. They were lively and prosperous. Magical beasts really reappeared? Meng Lei couldn't believe in his eyes. Back then, when the bloodthirsty iron crystal ants tide was beyond control, almost all magical beasts, except Saint Domain ones, had been completely devoured by the ant tide. However, not much time had passed, yet magical beasts were actually in abundance again. Where did they come from? Just this valley. Under Meng Lei's guidance, they reached the valley, passed through the hot spring, and reached the lava lake buried underneath the hot spring. The lava boiled with bubbles all over the surface. Amelin casually waved and grabbed Amos dragon carcass out of the lava lake. Upon feeling the familiar aura, Amelin couldn't contain her emotions and burst out crying again. For a half-deity to cry several times in a day, one could only imagine how deep her love for Amos was. I'm bringing my big brother's body back. As for this spatial ring, I will leave it to you. Since my big brother was willing to die for you, his inheritance should rightly be yours. If you encounter any trouble, you can come to find me on Dragon Island with this piece of dragon scale. Live properly. Don't let my big brother's death be in vain. Amelin then left. Meng Lei was left standing, stunned, on the water's surface, holding a spatial ring in his hand. Meng Lei had no mood to check inside the ring. Instead, he took out a jug of wine and started drinking. Drawing a knife to break water, the water flows more. Raising a glass to drink to eliminate worries, you worry more one. But undeniably, when one is sad and sorrowful, alcohol was the best relief. After an unknown period of time of continuous drinking, Meng Lei fell asleep. But when he woke up again, he woke from the sensation of being licked. Something soft was licking his cheek. Meng Lei opened his eyes and saw a tall magical beast looking at him with joy. It was 7 meters tall and fully covered with black dragon scales. It had 2 wings on its back, and its body was fully muscular. Teddy! Meng Lei rubbed his eyes. Master! Teddy flapped its wings and sent out spirit waves of surprise and joy. Meng Lei sensed that its aura was comparable to a 7th grade magical beast. Spirit communication was not a problem for it, though it couldn't speak in human language. Meng Lei smiled and said, Call me boss. Okay, boss. Boss. How come you are back? Boss. When did you get back? Boss. How come you returned just now? Boss, you won't be leaving again, right? Boss, Teddy missed you. Teddy was so overjoyed that it kept asking questions like a non-stopping cannon, stunning Meng Lei. He looked into Teddy's eyes, stunned, and noticed shining tears on the rims. Those eyes were full of emotions. Meng Lei felt a needle stabbing through his heart. In his own eyes, Teddy was a mere magical pet with low power. However, in Teddy's eyes, he was its only family. Family. A thick sense of guilt rose in Meng Lei's heart. He couldn't help but touch Teddy's nose. Sorry, Teddy. Boss, what's wrong? Teddy blinked, a bit confused. It's nothing. Sand in my eyes. Meng Lei breathed out and sat up straight. Teddy, why are you here? I sensed your aura, so I flew over to take a look. Teddy answered happily. I thought my senses were playing tricks. I didn't expect it would actually be you, boss. I see. Meng Lei understood. Teddy had signed an equal contract with him, and they could sense each other's souls. The closest the distance, the clearer the sensing. They weren't far from Magical Beast Village, so Teddy could naturally sense him. "Boss, how come you are back?" "I'm back to settle some affairs." "Now that you are back, are you leaving again?" "Maybe." You are pretty much a 7th grade magical beast. It seems that Captain Hutters and the others have raised you pretty well." Meng Lei's mood improved a lot now that he had a companion to talk to, and the sadness in his heart dissipated quite a lot. "Teddy, go hunt some beasts. I'll roast meat for you." "Got it." Teddy replied joyfully and flew away happily. Not long after, it flew back with a 5-meter-long mountain porcupine. "Boss, I want to eat roasted meat." "Okay." Waves of wind blades appeared, and they soon cut the mountain porcupine into many pieces. A flame appeared in thin air, and after a quarter of an hour, an enticing smell attacked their nostrils. "Let's eat." Meng Lei took a roasted porcupine leg and threw all of the remaining roasted meat to Teddy. "Boss, I'll start eating." Teddy cheered joyfully. "Roar." Then, all of a sudden, a beast roar resounded. Teddy shriveled, and the dragon scales all over its body immediately stood up. It was on full guard. "Don't stress. It's just a small beast." Meng Lei gestured for Teddy to calm down, and then continued to nibble at the delicious roasted porcupine leg, totally disregarding the intruding magical beast. "Boss, judging from its aura, it's at least an 8th grade magical beast." Teddy didn't lower its guard. "It can't be treated lightly." "Is that so?" Meng Lei chuckled. "Roar." Foul air pervaded the area before a 30-meter-long alligator-like lizard, with fiery red scales all over its body and a mouth full of canine teeth, crawled in. "It's the 9th grade magical beast, ground fire iguana." Teddy called in a low voice. "Boss, this guy is too powerful. I can't deal with it. Hurry and hop on my back." "Let's retreat first." "Retreat? Why are we retreating?" Meng Lei mentally shook his head many times. As long as Teddy, a titanic dragon ape with the purest bloodline, reached adulthood naturally, it would become a 9th grade magical beast. It would definitely not be weak. Unfortunately, a 9th grade magical pet was still too weak to follow Meng Lei. Teddy can probably consume the divine tree's fruit. Right? Right? A half-deity's body, vast wealth. Upon consuming the fruits, magical beasts could become Saint Domain magical beasts within a short few years. The uni-horned rose python was an example of this. Humans could also consume them, of course. Meng Lei had personally witnessed many contestants, who were stuck at the 9th grade pinnacle level, break through the gates of Saint Domain to successfully promote to Saint Domain level after they had consumed the divine tree's fruits. Next, the second effect, refining one's bloodline. Abe was an example of this. According to Abe, she had only been a golden colossal dragon person prior to eating the fruits and couldn't transform into a golden colossal dragon at all. However, she had managed to do it after consumption because her body's golden colossal dragon bloodline assimilation rate had gone past 70%. It was evident from this that the divine tree's fruits were indeed capable of refining one's bloodlines. As for other effects it might hold, he hadn't discovered any for the time being. However, just these 2 effects alone were already enough to make the divine tree's fruits an invaluable treasure. But Meng Lei still didn't dare to consume them. Why? According to OL President, the divine tree's fruits are the same as one's life essence, so they may contain the tree of life's divinity. Meng Lei took a breath as he muttered, "If they really contain its divinity, then they would be highly poisonous." What was divinity? It was a kind of mysterious energy that within which laid a deity's will, personality, beliefs, memories, laws of nature comprehension, principles of conduct, favored factions, and so on. Plainly put, divinity was akin to a deity's soul fragments. A great amount of information was contained within them. By absorbing divinity, mortals could raise their abilities, extend their lifespans, and increase their laws of nature comprehension, thereby greatly reducing the amount of time required for them to achieve deification. However, there was one deadly risk to absorbing divinity. There was a high chance of the fallen deity coming back to life through the divinity absorbed by mortals and taking over their bodies. After all, A deity's divine spirit was near immortal. Just a tiny little divine spirit fragment was enough to give them a chance of revival. This was absolutely no joke. Pray tell, should the divine tree's fruits and its life essence really contain the tree of life's divinity? If even something like that wasn't considered a poison, then what would be? Or at least, before he was absolutely sure, Meng Lei dared not eat them at all. Neither did he dare to let his friends or magical beast pets eat them. He'd rather they be a little weaker than run a risk like that. Divinity? How do I examine it? I should look that up. I have so many divine tree fruits and life essence with me. I can't just let them go to waste. Boom! The groundfire iguana strode over at this point. Its enormous form gave off a fearsome aura, causing Teddy to tense up all over, as if it were facing a great enemy. An anxious Teddy urged Meng Lei, "Hurry and get onto my back, boss. Let's retreat." Withdraw? Why are we withdrawing? Meng Lei shook his head lightly. That luscious piece of meat has delivered itself to our doorstep. How can we let down its good intentions? Oh, Teddy was rather stupefied. Then it turned flabbergasted. The weeds around them began to grow excessively before turning into several strong yet pliable grass whips that shot toward the mighty-looking groundfire iguana. Roar! The groundfire iguana let out a furious roar. It opened its mouth, and then several bouts of flames sprayed forth from within as it tried to burn the innumerable grass whips. Alas, it was to no avail. The grass whips penetrated the flames' blockade to wind around the groundfire iguana, binding it into a dumpling. Roar! The infuriated groundfire iguana roared into the sky and struggled fiercely, but the more it did, the tighter the grass whips contracted around it. The final outcome was evident. Bound by the grass whips, the groundfire iguana died of asphyxiation. It's dead. Teddy was rather flabbergasted. Boss, it's dead. Of course it's dead. Meng Lei flicked his fingers several times in succession, turning grass blades and leaves into razor-sharp blades. In just a few minutes, the groundfire iguana had been cut into several pieces and placed on the roasting rack. Boss, that's a 9th-grade groundfire iguana. Just like that, it has died by your hand. What's wrong? Are you already that impressive now, boss? One must admit that Meng Lei's casual act of slaying the groundfire iguana had thoroughly astounded Teddy. Like a curious little baby, the little fellow pestered Meng Lei with questions. Even the roast wasn't that attractive anymore. By the time they were done with the groundfire iguana, 3 hours had already gone by. Seated on Teddy's back, Meng Lei flew toward the magical beast village. He didn't plan on returning to the imperial city for the time being. Instead, he intended to stay a couple of days in the village to readjust his frame of mind. As for the suspended exchange competition, he would think about it again in the future. All of you'd better put in some strength. Stop being so limp and floppy like a pansy. Remember this. The chance to cultivate doesn't come by easily. If you want to get ahead and become someone strong like Meng Lei, then you must train hard. Do you understand? Yes. Great. 1, 2. 1, 2. A loud, clear whistle rang out at the square in front of the village entrance. Even from afar, one could see a group of adults and children standing in the square, moving according to Captain Hutter's commands and training. They waved their swords and swung them, again and again. Not bad. Even the children are cultivating. A comforting smile couldn't help but appear on Meng Lei's countenance. Staying in the mountains would never lead anywhere. Only by cultivating could one hope to see the vast skies. The villagers were doing pretty good. Whoosh! Teddy's descent from the sky attracted the villagers' attention, and they turned to look. At once, they were delighted, and looks of joy came over their countenances. Meng Lei! Big brother Meng Lei! Big brother Meng Lei is back! They swarmed toward him at once. I thought that Teddy had gone magical beast hunting when I saw it flying out in a rush. Little did I expect that it was going to you instead. Captain Hutters was elated. He said, "By the way, I heard from Jonah and the others. Weren't you heading to the Imperial City to take part in the exchange competition?" "Why, there was a small accident during the competition. I went to the magical beast forest to see to something, so I decided that I might as well come back to check on the village." Meng Lei eyed Hutters up and down. Then, he asked with a smile, "Captain, you've become a 4th-grade warrior? Ha ha ha. All thanks to those high-grade battle aura manuals of yours." A rosy Captain Hutters said, "Of course, it's also to do with the fact that the meals have been great recently. Teddy has been going to the forest every day, and every time he does, he returns with a magical beast. Eating mid-grade to high-grade magical beast meat every day halves the effort yet doubles the efficiency of cultivation. That's how I'd manage to advance by 2 grades in such a short amount of time." That's right, that's right. Meng Lei turned to the villagers to see that all of them had improved by varying degrees. Almost all the trainee warriors of the past had improved a lot and become 2nd or 3rd-grade warriors. As for the ordinary villagers, they had also become much stronger and sturdier than before. They were no longer skinny and sallow with haggard faces. Instead, their skin had become supple, and their bodies strong and energetic. "That's great." A smile appeared on Meng Lei's face. "It wasn't easy for you to come back, Meng Lei. We must show you hearty hospitality today." Hutters instructed the villagers loudly. "Training for today ends here. Inform everyone. We'll hold a bonfire feast to give Meng Lei a warm welcome home tonight. Yay! Captain Hutters the best. Big brother Meng Lei's the best." The village held a grand bonfire feast that night. The aromatic fragrance of meat permeated the village as the villagers sang and danced and ate and drank happily. As he ate the delicious roast and listened to the villagers' cheerful voices and laughter, Meng Lei's mood gradually improved, and he enjoyed a rare moment of happiness with the villagers. Late at night, despite resting in his rundown house, Meng Lei wasn't sleepy at all. Even though OL President was no longer around, life still went on. It was time for him to come up with a clear plan for the future. "I'm still too weak. If I'd been stronger, OL President wouldn't have died. At the bottom of it all, it's still a matter of strength. System. Bring up the stats interface. Whoosh. Host. Meng Lei race. Human, Fire Dragon Bloodline, 53%. Fire Demon Bloodline, 48%. Golden Colossal Dragon Bloodline, 51%. Golden God-Slaying Ant Bloodline, 10%. God-Slaying Rat Bloodline, 10%. Wealth. 3.2 Laws of Nature Origin Crystals Physical Body Constitution. Half-Deity, Elemental Level. Spirit. Saint Domain, 1, 039, 876, 198/100 billion. Magic Power. Saint Domain, 1, 037, 108, 765/100 billion. Laws of Nature. Fire Elemental, 0.2%. Wind Elemental, 0.1%. Thunder Elemental, 0.1%. Metal Elemental, 0.2%. Light Elemental, 0.1%. Others. Some increase. Physical Body Constitution. Half-Deity? Elementary Level? Where are the numerical values? They're gone. Since the numerical values are gone, does that mean that I can't directly improve my physical body constitution through credit redemption anymore? Is that so, system? The system gave him a definite answer. It replied, "Without concrete numerical values, the host naturally cannot redeem any credit." "All right, so be it then." Meng Lei curled his lip in disdain. "Well, as long as I can still redeem credit for bloodline assimilation rate, that way I can enhance my body all the same. But as someone that also has the body of a half-deity, why was I unable to kill the Tree of Life?" Meng Lei's eyes were cold and dark. What he didn't know was that even though the Tree of Life was one of the weakest half-deities out there, it had a fairly fearsome half-deity build. Botanical life forms had always been known for their tough and durable bodies, as well as their astonishingly high defenses. A half-deity of a similar level would usually find it challenging to break through a botanical half-deity's defenses. In Meng Lei's case, his body had only just broken through to become a half-deity, so how could he possibly kill the Tree of Life? "Never mind. I won't think about this anymore." Meng Lei's gaze then landed on the spirit attribute after it with a shake of his head. From a saint domain with a physical body constitution value of 34 billion points, He had broken through the 100 billion point upper limit to become a newbie half-deity with a half-deity build. His improvement was undeniably fast, and the distance he had crossed undeniably great. But the disadvantages were too obvious, and that was his soul, or rather, his spiritual power. It was precisely because his soul was too weak that it had ended up giving the Tree of Life the chance to counterattack and give him one final blow, thereby indirectly causing Aves' death. I have to improve my soul's durability. I mustn't have such an obvious weakness. Unfortunately, I don't have enough money. After a moment's hesitation, Meng Lei ultimately still brought out the spatial ring that Aves had left him. Stored within the ring was Aves' lifetime's worth of assets. President. Meng Lei heaved a sigh. His spiritual power entered the ring, and then he was stunned at once. It's so huge. Huge? How could the word huge even cut it? One practically couldn't see to the end. Inside the spatial ring was actually a continent that stretched on for hundreds of kilometers. Standing tall and proud in the continent were mountains of gold, heaps of magic cores, magical beast carcasses, hills of elemental crystals. The mountains of gold were big and lofty, tall and towering. The innumerable magic cores came by the billions and more. All the carcasses were of 9th grade and Saint Domain magical beasts. There wasn't any weaker than that. Multicolored magic crystals and glittering elemental crystals almost blinded Meng Lei. These are President's lifetime worth of assets? Isn't this a little too much? And a little too incredible? Meng Lei couldn't help but gasp, intense feelings of gratitude welling up within him. Thank you, President. I will put these things to good use. System. Collect all the gold coins. Whoosh! As the mountains of gold vanished one by one, his wealth value on his stats interface also began to spike. For laws of nature origin crystals, 5 laws of nature origin crystals, 6 laws of nature origin crystals, 20, 30, 40. In the span of a few breaths, his wealth had surpassed his previous 73 laws of nature origin crystal milestone and was continuing to rise at a terrifying speed. At last, when the number reached 238 laws of nature origin crystal, it finally came to a stop. It has increased by a whole 235 laws of nature origin crystals. That's 2,350 billion gold coins. Just the gold coins alone have amounted to so much. Not to mention that there are still so many magical beast carcasses, magic cores, magic crystals, and elemental crystals. Whoosh! His wealth instantly shrank. He was credited with 1,000 billion attribute points, which he added to his spirit attribute. Boom! An icy, surging aura gushed into Meng Lei's mind and began to furiously enhance his soul. For a while, Meng Lei could feel his soul's durability rising exceptionally quickly. At the same time, in Meng Lei's vast, boundless sea of consciousness, a silver flame burned quietly, chilly and aloof. It was Meng Lei's soul flame. Suddenly, endless golden rays appeared out of nowhere, gushing in from all around and straight toward the silver flame suspended in the air. The golden rays of light were just like petrol, like firewood, and also like natural gas. Boom! The moment they came into contact with the silver flame's intensity surged dramatically and began to visibly expand. Expand, expand, and expand. Doubling, tripling, quadrupling. 10-fold, 20-fold, 50-fold. Boom! The silver flame expanded to 100-fold of its original size and turned into an even brighter and even more radiant flame. Additionally, it had also changed in color. It was no longer silver but gold in color now. Yes, gold. The chilly, aloof silver soul flame had turned into a brilliant, dazzling golden one. Just like the blazing sun spanning across the heavens, the golden soul flame gave off 1,000,000 golden rays that shone upon the land and ruled the sky. His soul was no longer a soul now. Instead, it had metamorphosed into a divine spirit. This feeling, it's simply too fascinating. Meng Lei laid quietly with his eyes closed as he took in the changes brought about by his soul's transformation. Everything felt so natural and simple, yet also so complex at the same time. The wind was no longer wind, yet still wind. Trees were no longer trees, yet still trees. Even the flowing air was no longer air but still air, too. Is this what the half-deity realm is like? It's so fascinating. Are these golden chains covering the skies and the lands and forming all that exists in this world the laws of nature? Well, comprehending laws of nature isn't that hard. Is it? It feels as if layers of fog have been lifted, and I can now see clearer and have a more thorough view. Laws of nature. A mumbling Meng Lei withdrew his spiritual power, and then he entered his sea of consciousness. According to Amos, once one attained half-deification, their soul would metamorphose into a divine spirit. Divine spirits were near immortal and near inextinguishable. Even if a deity's divine spirit were crushed into bits and pieces, they could still use their divine spirit fragments to come back to life. Thus, Meng Lei wanted very much to take a look and see whether his own soul had metamorphosed or not. My soul flame has actually turned golden, and it's much stronger than what it was in the past. Is this what a divine spirit is? As expected, it's something beyond one's imagination. Meng Lei was awfully excited, but right after, he became terribly dejected. If I had owned a divine spirit earlier, President wouldn't have. Sigh, never mind. I wonder what these white threads are. Dozens, perhaps up to 100 milky white threads had appeared within Meng Lei's view. It was not known where they had come from, yet they were attached to his golden divine spirit like innumerable antennas. Rather curious, Meng Lei controlled his divine spiritual power to touch one of the white threads. Right away, a voice brimming with gratitude played in his mind. Big brother Meng Lei, you're my idol. I want to be someone like you in the future. Isn't that Monica's voice? Meng Lei was mildly taken aback. Monica, whose full name was Monica Draper, was a little girl in the village with a twin elder sister named Hester Draper. Apart from Jonah and himself, the two of them were the only ones in the village who were endowed with magic talent. On top of that, their magic talent was even better than Jonah's, with both of them having high-grade elemental affinities. Why is Monica's voice suddenly playing in my sea of consciousness? Meng Lei found this rather strange. His gaze continued down the white thread, and the sight of Monica currently lying in bed and looking as if she was in deep slumber entered his sight. However, she was also mumbling softly to herself as if she was dreaming. This is strange. Too strange. Then, Meng Lei picked another white thread. Thank you, Meng Lei. Thank you for everything that you've given us. It was Captain Hutter's voice, Big Brother Meng Lei. And now it was Jonah's. Why am I hearing everyone's voices? Never mind about Captain Hutter's and Monica, but Jonah's a long distance away in the capital city right now. Could it be? Meng Lei's eyes widened as he exclaimed, that this is the power of faith. Faith was a very miraculous thing. It could make one strong-willed, as well as make one pure. But in Heaven's vault continent, it also had another natural order-defying effect, the investiture of gods. As long as one had sufficient believers and the believer's faith was pious enough, the one they worshipped could soar right into the heavens with the help of the copious amounts of power of faith, thereby becoming a god and attaining immortality. Monica, Captain Hutters, and the others, they believe in me and idolize me. Meng Lei was rendered speechless. He hadn't done much for the village. All he had done was nothing more than just small favors that didn't even require him to lift a finger. Never would he have ever imagined that the villagers would actually worship him. He honestly didn't. Never mind. There's no harm in it anyway. Meng Lei wasn't too hung up over it. He continued to check the other white threads. True to his expectations, almost all of them led to the magical beast village villagers. Are there so many people who believe in me? I've heard that there are many benefits to having the power of faith. Not only can it strengthen one's divine spirit and allow one to comprehend laws of nature more easily, but it can also be converted into the power of divinity used to enhance one's strength. It's practically like Tiger Bomb 1. But why is it that I don't feel these effects that the power of faith is supposed to bring about at all? Is it because I have too few worshippers? Forget it. I don't have the time and leisure to spread my faith around to collect the power of faith. Being able to redeem credit is more than enough. Meng Lei exited his sea of consciousness. Then, his gaze landed on his stats interface again. Wealth, 138 laws of nature, origin crystals, physical body constitution. Half deity, elemental level. Spirit, half deity, elemental level magic power. Saint domain, 1037, 108, 765/100 billion. Both my physical body constitution and my spirit have gone through a qualitative change, so I'm just left with the magic power attribute now. Should I redeem some credit and complete the set? Meng Lei rubbed his chin, unable to quite make up his mind. What would magic power metamorphose into? The power of divinity? If it really turned out to be the power of divinity, then he would thoroughly become a real half-deity. He would possess a half-deity's body, a half-deity's soul, as well as the power of divinity, instead of what he currently was, a half-baked half-deity with a half-deity's body and soul but not the corresponding power of divinity. But the problem was, redeeming credit to boost his magic power attribute required a whole 100 laws of nature origin crystals. Once he spent that money, he'd become a pauper on paper again. To redeem, or not to redeem? Never mind, I'll just do it. System. Redeem 100 laws of nature origin crystals worth of magic power points. Whoosh! His wealth shrank again. Then, Meng Lei felt as if the magic power in his body was bubbling and boiling. They surged neatly and altogether toward his brain, taking only an instant to gush into it. For a moment there, Meng Lei felt as though he had been drained, and he felt a great deal friendlier. However, the feeling of feebleness didn't last long. Soon, another fiercer and more torrential rush of energy swept into his brain, instantly filling his limbs and every corner of his body. The wave of energy was simply too fearsome. Meng Lei could feel endless strength gushing forth from within his body, and he felt as if he could crush a continent with his fist. He hurriedly did an internal scan of his body. His magic power had disappeared. Instead, what had replaced it was an all-new type of power. It flooded through every fiber of his body, glowing a faint gold and emanating a terrifying might. Meng Lei couldn't be any more familiar with that mighty aura. The power of divinity. It really is the power of divinity. Meng Lei hurriedly looked at the stats interface. Wealth, 38 laws of nature origin crystals physical body constitution. Half-deity, elemental level. Spirit, half-deity, elemental level, power of divinity. 0.1 divinity crystal, true enough. Magic power has metamorphosed into the power of divinity. 0.1 divinity crystal? System. What's a divinity crystal? The system replied coldly, a friendly reminder. A divinity crystal is the crystallized form of power of divinity. It's the unit of measurement for the power of divinity and is also the currency in circulation among deities. 100 power of divinity droplets usually equates to 1 divinity crystal. In other words, I currently only have 10 power of divinity droplets? Meng Lei blinked and commented, isn't that too little? How can this bit of power of divinity possibly suffice? It makes me feel so insecure. I have to redeem credit. All right, let's get to 10 divinity crystals before we talk. A friendly reminder. 10,000 laws of nature origin crystals are required per divinity crystal. Trattino basso. 10,000 laws of nature origin crystals? I'm gonna faint. Aren't you being too much of a crook? Meng Lei was almost jumping up and down in a fury. 1 divinity crystal equals 100 power of divinity points, and 1 divinity crystal equals 10,000 laws of nature origin crystals. In other words, 1 power of divinity point equals 100 laws of nature origin crystals, and 100 laws of nature origin crystals equals 1 power of divinity droplet. Oh my goodness! 1 power of divinity droplet alone requires 100 laws of nature origin crystals. King system. Aren't you being too unscrupulous? Meng Lei had almost wet himself. With 100 laws of nature origin crystals, he could use limitless pickup 100 times. With 100 laws of nature origin crystals, he could raise his god-slaying rat bloodline assimilation rate by 10%. Yet the same amount was only enough for him to redeem 1 power of divinity droplet? Were they serious? The system didn't respond, leaving behind only a quiet space for Meng Lei. What the heck? It's too unscrupulous. Meng Lei was fuming mad, yet there was nothing he could do about it. To think he had even been a little gleeful just now. After all, he couldn't directly redeem credit for his spirit attribute or his physical body constitution attribute anymore, so all that was left was just his power of divinity attribute, 0.1 divinity crystal. Despite his power of divinity attribute being the only thing left that he could still redeem credit for, this had to happen. He could only redeem one power of divinity point with 100 laws of nature origin crystals. Was this daylight robbery or daylight robbery? Did justice still exist? Was there still any law and order? I thought that I had gotten rich overnight and was on my way to my life's pinnacle. But now, I'm back to being penniless. Boosting the god-slaying rat bloodline assimilation rate requires money, as does boosting the power of divinity attribute and my comprehension of laws of nature. Every single thing requires money, and not just a small sum at that. They're all large amounts of money. All that aside, though, at least he could still redeem credit for those. Meng Lei believed that, with his current level of strength, if he worked a little harder, he would surely be able to earn enough over time. The troublesome part was his divine spirit. He couldn't redeem any credit for that. How was he supposed to enhance it, then? Meng Lei sank into contemplation. Since meditation could raise one's spiritual power, it could also do the same for the divine spirit. The level of efficiency, though, that probably didn't need to be expounded upon. There's one more way I can enhance my divine spirit, and that is to collect the power of faith. The power of faith is an all-nourishing elixir when it comes to enhancing one's divine spirit. As long as I can get enough power of faith. But all the faith resources on Heaven's Vault continent have been fully split among other parties. Where am I supposed to spread my faith to? What a headache! Just as Meng Lei was lost in his troubled thoughts, his magic communication device suddenly rang. He took it out to see that it was actually President Fred who was calling. Where are you now, Meng Lei? President Fred had an awful look on his face. I'm in the Magical Beast Village. The Magical Beast Village? President Fred was a little taken aback by his answer, but he regained his senses right away. Why are you at the Magical Beast Village? Weren't you in the Lost Continent? It's a long story, President. Meng Lei shook his head lightly. Then, he asked in puzzlement, is something up? Something terrible has happened. Prince Barbarossa is dead. And so is the 13th princess whom His Majesty loves and dotes on the most. Meng Lei, answer me honestly. President Fred asked gravely. Do their deaths have anything to do with you? Is it really like what the surviving contestants claimed? That you're the one that caused their deaths? I caused their deaths? Meng Lei couldn't help but laugh. If I tell you that this matter has nothing to do with me, would you believe me? President Fred stayed quiet for a moment before he replied. If you dare give me your word, then I'll believe you. All right, since President trusts me that much, then I'll tell you. Meng Lei let out a laugh and replied, the 108 deaths indeed have a little to do with me, but the main cause of their deaths is still their greed. Their greed. President Fred frowned slightly. This is what happened. Meng Lei hid nothing from him and truthfully recounted everything that had happened. President Fred fell into silence at the end of the recount. After a long while, he finally said, based on what you've said, you are indeed not to be blamed for this matter. Had they not coveted the divine tree's fruits, they wouldn't have brought down such calamity on themselves. But, President Fred changed the course of the conversation and said, that's not what His Majesty and all the officials think. All of them have pushed the blame onto you. They believe that this wouldn't have happened had you not stolen that native half-deity's possessions. Thus, all blame lies on you. So, they intend to make me the scapegoat no matter what I say? Meng Lei chuckled contemptuously and scoffed. What a joke. This tragedy was obviously brought about by the Emperor's lapse in judgment and the contestants' greed. Yet they want to make me the scapegoat? Meng Lei, His Majesty is the Emperor. We can make mistakes, but His Majesty must never make any. President Fred chastised him furiously. Moreover, Not only are Sachin the golden dragon lion, Miriam the immortal fairy, and so on, part of the fatalities, but it includes even Prince Barbarossa and the 13th princess. One's the empire's future emperor, while the other's the most favored princess. His Majesty cannot afford to make such a mistake. Therefore, the only thing that all the officials and nobles can do is to vent their anger on you. So, what do they intend to do? Asked Meng Lei with a scornful laugh. His Majesty has already deployed the Royal Holy Knight Order to the Lost Continent to capture you. President Fred shook his head and added, if nothing goes wrong, you'll be held responsible for the whole matter. I'm to be held responsible for it? A sharp glint flashed across Meng Lei's eyes as he said, just as well. I've been in a terrible mood recently and sorely missing a venting outlet. What do you intend to do, Meng Lei? Return to the Imperial City. At Dragon God Empire Conference Hall, Emperor Frederick XXXII sat high above the others on the throne, his countenance frighteningly dark and sinister. Academy presidents and teachers in charge from the various major academies, a great number of Saint domains, and all the court officials stood at both sides of the Grand Hall. In the center of the Grand Hall quietly laid more than 100 corpses. All of them had been wrapped in yellow fabric, their faces hidden from view. However, the occasional glimpse of skin exposed outside the fabric showed signs of extreme dryness and shrinkage. Evidently, those 100-odd corpses belonged to the 108 contestants who had just lost their lives. Not a sound could be heard in the Grand Hall at the moment. Filled with dead silence, the atmosphere in there was frighteningly repressive. Everyone stayed still and silent, none of them daring to open their mouths. As time passed, at last Emperor Frederick XXXII couldn't stand it anymore. He asked, is there still no news from the Royal Holy Knight Order? No, there isn't, Your Majesty. It's already been a day and a night since they've set off for the Lost Continent. Yet there's still no news from them. Has Meng Lei soared into the heavens or burrowed into the ground or what? Frederick XXXII was enraged. Send men there. Dispatch more hands at once. Meng Lei must be brought back. I have to get the truth from him face to face. Yes, Your Majesty. At once, an official leapt upon the order. Reporting. A golden-armored guard ran briskly into the hall all of a sudden. He knelt down and said, why, Your Majesty? Are there news from the Holy Knight Order? Frederick XXXII was elated. No, that's not it. Meng Lei has come. What? Meng Lei has come? The hall was in an uproar at once. President Fred, who was among the crowd, was even more astonished. Isn't Meng Lei at the magical beast village? Why is he here so quickly? Let him in, ordered Frederick XXXII hastily. Yes, Your Majesty. Before long, led by the golden-armored guard, Meng Lei stepped into the Grand Hall. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Everyone's gazes simultaneously landed on him. Within their eyes was fury, murderous intent, hatred, confusion. Frederick XXXII eyed Meng Lei up and down, an unusual glint flashing across his eyes. Then, he shouted fiercely, Meng Lei, do you own up to your sins? Own up to my sins? How have I sinned? Meng Lei feigned astonishment. Why the question, Your Majesty? How dare you make fallacious arguments even at death's door? Frederick XXXII was furious. He pointed at the 108 corpses on the floor as he shouted, do you know who they are? Do you know how they died? These people? Meng Lei squatted down, casually flipped over a piece of yellow fabric, and took a look. Then, with a shake of his head, he remarked, so it's them. You recognize them now, don't you? Since you have, then tell me. Frederick XXXII roared furiously, his voice like dull, rolling thunder. Why did you kill them? 108 people. That's a whole 108 people. Every one of them was an elite of the Empire, the painstaking effort of every major academy for the last dozens of years, and even more so the future pillars and saint domains of the Empire. Tell me, why did you kill them? I caused their deaths? Aren't you shouting for others to catch the thief when you're the thief yourself and deliberately framing me, Your Majesty? Meng Lei burst into loud laughter as though he had just heard the funniest joke in the world. His raucous laughter resounded brazenly in the hall, echoing continuously for a long time. "How impudent! How dare you! How brazen!" Everyone glared furiously at him right away. The way they were glowering at him was as if they wanted to eat him up. "This is the Empire's Grand Conference Hall, Meng Lei, with the Emperor in front of you, a great many Saint Domains beside you, and all the court officials here. Your impudence and arrogance will not be tolerated." Duke Eustace stepped forward and ordered, "You need only to answer His Majesty's questions honestly. Do not be unruly and ignorant, or act in a bold and presumptuous manner. Be civil, Meng Lei." President Fred, who was so shocked that his heart was pounding, hastily stepped forward and chastised him softly as well. "Fine." Meng Lei nodded slightly. He couldn't just disregard President Fred after all. He said dispassionately, "I sympathize with how the 108 contestants have died from unnatural causes, but there are only two real culprits behind their deaths. The first one themselves. They caused their own deaths? Ridiculous." Everyone couldn't help but sneer at his words. Had they not coveted the divine tree's fruits, would they have landed themselves in such a state? Therefore, it's their greed that led to the current situation. Meng Lei's voice was calm and aloof. He looked straight at Frederick the 32nd and went on. "The second reason is you yourself, Your Majesty. Don't be impudent, Meng Lei." President Fred was so shocked that he couldn't help but shudder. He hastily lowered his voice and chided him. "Are you out of your mind? How dare you speak to His Majesty like that? Hear me out, President." Meng Lei gazed at Frederick the 32nd, who was seated high above on the throne, and said, "It's because you sent us there for the competition when you haven't even gotten a clear idea of the lost continent's background and situation. That's what ultimately led to this tragedy. Therefore, it's you that caused their deaths, Your Majesty. It's your lack of thorough investigation that caused their deaths. It's your carelessness and lack of vigilance that caused their deaths. What has it got to do with me? Why you? Frederick the 32nd's face had turned a dull purple from his words. He glowered at Meng Lei, his visage pale one moment and green another, his eyes looking as if he wanted to eat Meng Lei up. "Meng Lei!" Duke Eustace shouted fiercely. "It's clearly you that had stolen the native half-deity's belongings and ultimately caused the deaths of 108 contestants. How dare you be so bold and audacious as to push the blame onto His Majesty? This is truly perverse behavior and an attempt to confuse the public." "Your Majesty!" Eustace looked at Frederick the 32nd and said, "I request that the survivors be summoned into the hall so that they can confront Meng Lei face to face." "Summon them." Soon, a group of surviving contestants walked into the hall. The moment they saw Meng Lei, they acted as if they'd just seen the murderer who killed their fathers and collectively lashed out at him. "Meng Lei, you bastard! It's you. It's you that killed those 108 contestants. If you hadn't stolen the Tree of Life's belongings, would it have killed them so mercilessly? You have to take full responsibility for the deaths of those 108 contestants." Meng Lei. Frederick the 32nd took a deep breath and asked, "What do you have to say now, Meng Lei?" "What do I have to say? There's nothing much I have to say." Meng Lei shook his head and went on. "I've already clearly stated whatever that should be said. Whether all of you are willing to listen or not has nothing to do with me." "How impudent! Meng Lei, you have caused the deaths of 108 contestants and caused the exchange competition to be halted midway. On top of that, you even raised your voice in the Grand Hall and acted brazenly without restraint, disrespecting me and taking the court lightly." Frederick the 32nd pointed at Meng Lei and declared, "There is no limit to your perverseness. Your intentions are punishable by death. Men, capture him. He is to be sent to the dragon flesh-scraping platform 3 days later and publicly beheaded as a warning to descendants of the royalty." "Yes, Your Majesty." A group of golden-armored guards charged into the hall. "Please be lenient, Your Majesty." At the sight of this, President Fred immediately wanted to beg for mercy but was stopped by Frederick the 32nd. "Even if he's royalty, a rebel like Meng Lei is In truth, no different from devil spies like Adolphe. Whoever begs for mercy on his behalf shall be seen as having committed the same crime as him. Your Majesty, this is the ring you lent me, President, said Meng Lei as he stopped President Fred, who was intending to continue begging for mercy. After he returned the ring, Meng Lei said with a laugh, "In heaven's vault continent, it's the strong that are the most revered. If you aren't strong enough, no matter how much you say, it is nothing more than just the tragic lamenting of the weak." He turned to Frederick the 32nd and, with a smile, said, "The dragon flesh-scraping platform is probably somewhere meant exclusively for killing members of the royalty, right? So sorry, but I'm not royalty, so you can come at me right away. If all of you are that capable, I'm very happy to become Timon Barton II and perish unexpectedly. If not, and if you can't kill me, then don't hold it against me if I annihilate all of you. To sum it up, either you kill me, or I'll kill you. I'll kill you." Boom! His words were virtually a magnitude 10.0 earthquake that shocked and enraged all the high-ranking officials, nobles, and more than 1,000 Saint Domains present. Madness! He's gone mad. Everyone gasped in unison as they stared at Meng Lei as though they were looking at a lunatic. He was but a puny little 16-year-old Saint Domain and a child that hadn't even fully matured, and yet he dared to utter such things in front of so many Saint Domains in the most dignified place in the empire? Just how outrageous was he? Just how arrogant was he? And just how foolish was he? How dare a child like you behave so outrageously? Frederick the 32nd crushed the throne with a strike of his palm as he roared furiously, "Where are the golden armored guards? Why haven't you arrested him? What are you waiting for?" "Yes, Your Majesty." The dozen or so golden armored guards responded loudly, and then they swarmed toward Meng Lei. "You'd better behave. Get on your knees. Don't put up a fight." As sentries guarding the conference hall, every one of them was only a step away from becoming a Saint Domain. With so many of them joining hands, even a Saint Domain would have to bow down to them. Unfortunately, they were destined for tragedy this time. Just as the golden armored guards charged over fiercely, a strong, surging recoil force suddenly burst forth from Meng Lei. Boom! The wild, violent force erupted all of a sudden, instantly sending all the golden armored guards flying backward. Blood sprayed from their mouths as they became still and motionless. All of them had actually died from the impact. What? They're dead. A huge jolt went through everyone in the hall. "You, how dare you?" Frederick the 32nd looked infuriated, his visage savage, looking as he roared hysterically, "Take him down! Take him down!" President Fred. So this is the great student that the Fire Dragon Magic Academy has produced. Someone rushed forward out of nowhere, giving President Fred a cold, icy look before glaring furiously at Meng Lei. "You crazy fool who has lost all reason. You've got a lot of nerve. Give yourself up at once." "Who are you?" asked Meng Lei as he gazed at the black-haired elderly man with a pair of black horns in front of him. "The Academy President of Black Dragon Academy of the Black Dragon Kingdom. Angus," Angus ordered calmly. "You audacious and impudent maniac, get on your knees and kowtow to His Majesty and beg for forgiveness at once. Otherwise, don't hold it against me if I show you no civility." "Show me no civility? How are you planning to do that?" Meng Lei flicked his fingers and stated calmly, "I'd like to have a taste of that very much." "How audacious!" Angus' eyes widened. Rather than anger, he was pleased instead. He declared, "Since you have a death wish, kid, no one will say anything even if I slaughter you right here and now." Whoosh! Before he'd even finished speaking, Angus had already abruptly charged out, coming right up to Meng Lei in an instant. There were no extra flourishes to his actions but just a simple and violent punch. This single punch was more than enough. "That guy has actually gotten ahead of me." The other Saint Domains who were intending to attack stopped in their tracks one by one, secretly more or less a little displeased. Although they were dissatisfied with how Angus had acted one step faster than them, they nevertheless had to acknowledge his strength. As an old-timer Saint Domain, Angus had already made a name for himself since several hundred years ago. He possessed unfathomably great power. In particular, he was even a pure-blooded black dragon and owned an incredibly strong and sturdy body. There weren't many present who would dare claim certain victory over him. With him attacking, there wasn't much left for the others to do anymore. The next moment, however, everyone's eyes widened dramatically, as if they had just seen a ghost. Meng Lei neither dodged nor evaded Angus' attack. Instead, he casually stretched his right arm out, and then, with a light grab as though he was just catching a ping-pong ball, he caught hold of President Angus' fist. Roar! All the momentum, all the power, and all the raging violence. All of it dissipated into the air at this moment as if they had never once existed. How can that be? Angus was shocked and horrified to the extreme. The Black Dragon Academy president is nothing more than just this. Meng Lei shook his head, and then his right leg casually kicked forward. With a dull thud, Angus flew backward with a tragic cry like a launched cannon. He crashed headfirst into the dragon wall one above the Emperor, blasting a hole in the savage-looking colossal dragon wall mural made out of gold and embedding his entire self into it. Silence. The whole place was filled with dead silence. Everyone stared at Angus, who was embedded in the dragon wall. In a daze, the look in their eyes blank, vacant, and stunned. A single strike. He had sent President Angus flying with just a single strike? Among the crowd, President Fred, the Fighting Dragon Academy president, and the others exchanged looks, every one of them seeing the shock, horror, and disbelief in one another's eyes. Fred, the Fighting Dragon Academy president swallowed hard as he asked, "Since when has Meng Lei possessed such strength?" I don't know either." Fred murmured to himself, an exciting range of expressions on his visage. Roar. With a furious roar, Angus extricated himself out of the dragon wall. With blood at the corners of his lips, he glared furiously at Meng Lei as the flames of fury burned in his eyes. "I've surprisingly underestimated you just now." Angus wiped the blood off the corners of his lips as he sneered. "But you've successfully angered me now, brat. Dare you go outside the hall with me?" "Why wouldn't I?" Meng Lei replied as he cocked his eyebrow. Then he shot out of the grand hall first. With a cold snort, Angus also followed after him and flew out of the hall. "Quickly, follow after them. Don't let him get away." At the sight of this, everyone in the hall quickly followed them out. The moment they exited the hall, they spotted Meng Lei and Angus, who both stood proudly in midair and staring at each other from afar. "Brat, I'll admit that you possess strength far beyond the average Saint Domains. I'll also admit that you're even more of a monster than Timon Barton, who's ranked top in history. But you still have to die anyway." Angus let out a furious roar, his voice erupting with a loud boom like rolling thunder. He had transformed. Roar! An enormous black dragon standing at over 60 meters tall and covered in pitch-black scales all over abruptly appeared. Its sharp claws glittered with an icy-cold gleam, and sharp teeth lined its jaws. Pure dragon might erupted and spread to the surroundings like smoke signals of war rushing into the sky. It swept through the entire palace in an instant and spread toward all directions. A black dragon. That's a pure-blooded black dragon. What has happened over there? Alarmed, all the other people in the palace looked at Angus in the sky. Angus opened his mouth, and an inky, pitch-black dragon breath sprayed forth from within, instantly sweeping toward Meng Lei. A black dragon's dragon breath was a very fearsome type of acid that contained astonishing corrosion abilities. It held shocking might, and even a Saint Domain expert would be corroded into mere bones if it got onto them. "That's all you got?" Meng Lei shook his head lightly. With a slight dodge, he easily evaded the black dragon breath shooting toward him. Then he took step after step toward Angus. His movements appeared slow, but in truth they were extremely quick. In a split second, he had reached right above Angus. "Goodbye, President Angus." Meng Lei stamped his foot down lightly. "Oh no!" Greatly alarmed, Angus immediately wanted to flap his wings and duck. However, the thought had only just arisen in his mind when Meng Lei's foot came lightly from afar and stepped on his head. Boom! A great, vast force erupted. Angus didn't even have the time to cry out before his dragon head was blasted apart by the kick, much like a great hammer smashing into a watermelon. Brain fluid spurted everywhere as blood sprayed all about. Boom! Angus' enormous body fell through the sky and landed on the even level square, smashing a huge pit into the square. The body was still and motionless, evidently thoroughly dead. The head, which had been blasted apart, was an exceptionally painful sight. Oh. Everyone was stunned and dazed. Angus has actually been instantly taken out by a single kick? Just what kind of combat strength is that? Oh, dragon god above! A brief moment of surprise and stunned stupefaction later, a furor went through the entire square. As every single person stared at the ruptured dragon head and at President Angus, who had been taken out in an instant, they couldn't help but gasp. That was President Angus. One must know that he was an old-timer Saint Domain that had already made a name for himself several hundred years ago. Moreover, he was even a pure-blooded black dragon of the purest bloodline. He was pretty much already a high-level Saint Domain, and yet, his head had been blasted apart with just a kick, and he had been killed in a second. Just what kind of combat strength was that? Had it been others who had killed him, it wouldn't have been that surprising. But the key here was that the one that had taken his life was just a 16-year-old little brat. A 16-year-old brat. Who would believe something like that? Who would dare to believe something like that? And how were they supposed to believe something like that? For a moment there, the emperor, the whole court of officials, nobles, and up to 1,000 Saint Domains all stared at that figure standing calmly and quietly in the sky, their eyes filled with disbelief. I've heard something before. Meng Lei, who was facing everyone's gazes that looked as if they were looking at a monster, spoke at this point. His voice was calm and even, yet it echoed in the sky above the palace and clearly reached every corner of the palace. I've heard that brave dragon slayers don't exist in the Dragon God Empire because all those that dared harbor designs on pure-blooded colossal dragons have all died. Since I've killed a black dragon today, does that mean that I've become the one and only brave dragon slayer in the Dragon God Empire? A brave dragon slayer? The corners of everyone's lips spasmed at his words. They were fuming mad. He was simply too arrogant and conceited. That evil creature. That damned evil creature. Frederick the 32nd was so infuriated that he was shaking with rage. Even his countenance was all contorted as he commanded, "Kill him! Kill him! I want him dead. I'm going to cut him into 1,000,000 pieces and torture him to death. I want him to die a terrible death." The many Saint Domains present hesitated. Meng Lei had taken only an instant to kill Angus, thereby exhibiting fearsome strength capable of instantly killing a high-level Saint Domain. Were they to attack, wouldn't they just be sending themselves to death's door in vain? President Luke, are you going to just watch as that evil creature behaves so presumptuously? Frederick the 32nd bellowed furiously as he turned to President Luke and the others. Among everyone present, President Luke was definitely the strongest of them all. Who was supposed to attack if not him? "I understand, Your Majesty." President Luke nodded slightly. With a flash of his form and an aloof look on his countenance, he came right up to Meng Lei. "Meng Lei, not only do you possess the fire dragon bloodline, but you're even a member of royalty. Yet you behave in such a perverse and insane manner, wantonly slaying a pure-blooded dragon. All right, you can skip the unnecessary crap. Even my ears are becoming calloused from all superfluous rubbish." Meng Lei waved dismissively and interrupted President Luke, who was filled with righteous indignation. "We'll let our skills speak for themselves." "How presumptuous!" President Luke looked livid. Then, a magic staff abruptly manifested in his hand. Buzz! Right away, wind elements within a few kilometers of where they were swiftly gathered and formed a 10 meters long Cyan wind blade. "Go, dimensional blade!" With an icy snort from President Luke, the Cyan wind blade sliced through the air and shot toward Meng Lei at a lightning-quick speed. It moved incredibly swiftly and was hardly visible to the naked eye, as expected of a Saint Domain great magician at their pinnacle. at the sight of the dimensional blade shooting rapidly toward him. A look of approval appeared on Meng Lei's face. Then, he stretched out his right arm and grabbed at it in the most casual of motions. What's he doing? Is he taking the dimensional blade head-on? What a lunatic! He's a total lunatic. He's a total lunatic. Who would dare do that unless they're a lunatic? Everyone in the square was shocked by Meng Lei's crazy action. Dimensional Blade was hailed as the strongest wind elemental single-target offensive first-class spell. It was also considered one of the best among the many single-target offensive first-class spells out there in terms of offensive power. This was especially true when it was President Luke, a Saint Domain at pinnacle level, casting it. Its might was absolutely incredible, yet Meng Lei actually intended to take it head-on with bare hands. What was he, if not a lunatic? You're going too far. President Luke let out an icy snort, a hint of great displeasure flashing across his features. He was the Dragon God Academy president and a pinnacle-level wind elemental Saint Domain great magician, yet Meng Lei was looking down on him so much. What a great insult to him this was. What happened next, however, completely overturned everything that President Luke knew. Meng Lei easily caught the highly compressed and incomparably sharp dimensional blade capable of cutting apart everything in the world when it reached right in front of him with a casual grabbing motion. The dimensional blade, which was hailed as the strongest wind elemental single-target offensive first-class spell, simply couldn't make even a nick on Meng Lei's fair, tender, smooth, exquisite, slender, and delicate hand. Break! Meng Lei's hand closed around it forcefully with a soft shout. Crack! The incomparably compressed dimensional blade instantly broke into pieces and turned into innumerable psi and wind elements, upon which they returned to the universe as if they'd never once appeared. New! That's impossible! Oh, Dragon God above! How can this possibly be true? Catching and breaking the dimensional blade with his bare hand. Is he even human? President Luke was dumbfounded, and so were the other 1,000-odd Saint Domains and Frederick the 32nd. Astounded to the extreme, no one could believe their eyes. As they say, it doesn't fulfill propriety if one doesn't return as good as they receive. Have a taste of my dimensional blade, too. Meng Lei formed a sword with his fingers and lightly drew a line across the air. Slash! The air instantly ripped apart. A black fissure slightly over 1 meter long quietly appeared. And then, as light as a feather, it started to extend toward President Luke. Are ripping apart the air? President Luke looked as though he'd just seen a ghost. He shuddered all over, and even his voice was trembling a little. Then, his voice was abruptly cut off. The black fissure had quietly appeared and lightly slashed across his neck. A bloody line formed, and then, his head left his body. Boom! President Luke's corpse plummeted onto the square with a crash before turning into its true form. It was actually a Tempest Colossal Dragon with cyan scales all over it and over 70 meters long. The Tempest Colossal Dragon was a wind elemental colossal dragon and one of the 10 major dragon breeds. Their forte was wind elemental dragon language magic. Meng Lei descended from the sky and landed on top of the Tempest Colossal Dragon carcass. As he gazed at all the Saint Domains that numbered up to 1,000 present, he couldn't help but lick his lips. Since hunting magical beasts could earn him gold coins, would killing people also bring him gold coins? The answer was a definite yes. To be honest, Meng Lei had actually known from the very beginning that he could also earn gold coins by killing people, but he had refrained from doing so. After all, since he could earn gold coins just by hunting magical beasts, why should he kill people? He didn't want to become a cold, ruthless devil that didn't even so much as bat an eyelid when killing someone, just for the sake of money. But today, Meng Lei had decided to go on a killing spree. Killing Angus had earned him 7.3 Laws of Nature Origin crystals, while killing President Luke had earned 9.2 Laws of Nature Origin crystals. With so many Saint Domains present, how many Laws of Nature Origin crystals would that amount up to? Besides, a vast majority of them weren't even human, but magical beasts. Were dragons human? Of course not. Your Majesty, didn't you want me to die a terrible death? Why aren't you attacking yet? Meng Lei held his hands behind him, and leisurely took step after step toward the emperor as though he was taking a stroll in the park. Guards! Guards! Frederick the 32nd was so frightened that he shuddered all over and began to shout at the top of his lungs. Protect the emperor! Protect his majesty! Everyone quickly stood in front of the emperor, assuming a fighting stance as if they were protecting the emperor. However, their faces were pale, their legs were shaking, and their eyes were brimming with fear. Meng Lei had badly frightened all of them. Meng Lei, stop that! President Fred stepped forward at this point. It's not too late yet if you turn back now. If you continue to err so stubbornly, the Dragon God Empire will no longer have a place for you. Turn back? Can I still turn back? As he looked into Fred's eyes, which were filled with sadness and heartache, Meng Lei looked up and sighed to the heavens. President, do you know something? I just lost someone who was dearest to me. President Fred was startled. To save me, he perished together with the tree of life. That's the only reason why these pieces of garbage could leave the lost continent alive. Meng Lei cast a glance at the dozens of surviving contestants, frightening them so badly that their insides nearly ruptured from fear. But look at what happened in the end. Not only are these heartless and cold-blooded ingrates not even the least bit thankful, but they even want me to take the blame. Don't you think they deserve to die? Perish together with the tree of life? At once, something seemed to occur to President Fred, and he exclaimed, Could it be that the Dragon King supporting you has died? That's right. Meng Lei nodded heavily as harsh, killing intent filled his eyes. So, don't stop me. You can't stop me. Anyway, I'm going to kill all these ingrates today and let them follow old President to the other world. Meng Lei? Fred wanted to persuade him further, but Meng Lei had already vanished from where he was. By the time he reappeared, he was already right in front of the Emperor and the many other Saint Domains. Bunch of ingrates. How do you still have the cheek to live with yourselves in this world? Go to hell, all of you. With a flick of his fingers, several ice blades shot forward and instantly engulfed the surviving contestants. Splurt! Splurt! A round of ice blades later, all the surviving contestants had lost their lives. They didn't even have the time to beg for mercy. After that, Meng Lei turned to Frederick the 32nd as if he'd only done something so trivial that it wasn't even worth mentioning. Your Majesty, I feel pretty wrong that you should claim that I've caused the deaths of 108 contestants, Meng Lei said with a slight smile. So that you do not wrong me, I shall do a little something. What are you planning to do? Frederick the 32nd roared furiously. I'm the Emperor of the Empire, the noble and distinguished Dragon Emperor. If you dare attack me, all the old Grandmasters on the Dragon Island will never let you off. There will no longer be a place for you in this whole world. Is that so? I'd like very much to try that then. Meng Lei made a grabbing motion in the air, and then, an ice sword glittering with a cold, icy glint appeared in his hand. Guards! Guards! Frederick the 32nd retreated several steps, filled with alarm and fear. The group of Saint Domain experts standing in front of him and blocking him from Meng Lei also retreated along with him. With every step Meng Lei advanced, they took a step back. With another step forward, they took yet another step back. A single person was actually pressuring 1,000 Saint Domains into pathetic retreat. It was practically the most comical sight ever. You bold, audacious outlaw! Don't you hurt His Majesty! At that moment, a few loud and sonorous dragon roars suddenly traveled over from the sky a great distance away. Everyone raised their heads and looked over to see several colossal dragons flapping their wings and flying toward them. Golden scales, golden claws, golden wings, and golden horns. There were a few golden colossal dragons. In terms of body size alone, those few golden colossal dragons were a tad inferior to Barbarossa's 100 meters long dragon form. But the surging, torrential dragon might around them was immeasurably stronger than Barbarossa's. Evidently, all of them were golden colossal dragon people with extremely pure bloodlines. Although still not as pure as Barbarossa's, their actual strength far surpassed his. The Elders! It's the 10 Elders! Your Majesty! The 10 Elders have come! The many Saint Domains were overjoyed. That's great! With the 10 elders here, I have no need to worry anymore. Frederick the 32nd was delighted. Then, a savage look gleamed in his eyes, and he declared, "You evil creature, I want you to die a terrible death today." Those are the 10 elders of the Senior Statesmen's Assembly. Fred heaved a sigh and tried to kindly persuade Meng Lei again. Meng Lei, don't make any more mistakes. The 10 elders of the Senior Statesmen's Assembly are all pinnacle-level Saint Domain great experts, among whom the Grand Elder is even a limits-level Saint Domain and an existence that's a step away from becoming a half-deity. You won't be their match at all. Listen to me, and stop while it's still not too late. A limits-level Saint Domain? Meng Lei licked his lips and asked, the kind of limits-level expert that has reached 99.999% comprehension of a type of laws of nature and is just a final step away from attaining 100% comprehension? Yes, Fred said in a low voice. Every limits-level Saint Domain is incomparably exalted. Even the half-deity grandmasters have to show them some courtesy. You? Awesome. The stronger, the better. Meng Lei licked his lips. The stronger they were, the more valuable they would be. Only then would there be a kick in killing them. Crash, crash. In the twinkling of an eye, the 10 golden colossal dragons had reached right above him. The largest was nearing 100 meters long, and even the smallest was as long as 90 meters. Each of them gave off vast, mighty dragon might that made everyone present feel immense pressure. "Where's the knave, your majesty?" The longest golden colossal dragon shouted the question furiously, his voice as though a thunderclap. "What good timing, elders!" Frederick the 32nd pointed at Meng Lei and shouted furiously, "Kill that wicked fiend at once!" "Calm down, your majesty. When we capture that wicked fiend, we'll hand him over to your majesty to deal with," the longest golden colossal dragon roared. "Bold and impudent knave! How dare you come and act so wildly in the Empire's palaces? You deserve to die 1,000 times for your act of treason." "Ha ha! I deserve to die 1,000 times for my act of treason?" Meng Lei laughed into the sky as the hammer of destruction appeared in his hand. Then, he appeared out of the blue right in front of one of the golden colossal dragons, raised the hammer, and swung it toward the golden colossal dragon. How audacious! The golden colossal dragon glowered at him and raised its sharp, savage-looking claws and swiped at him. Boom! The hammer of destruction collided with the golden colossal dragon's claws. The claws straight up broke and became all mashed up with a hole smashed right into it. Ah! Following a shrill scream, large droplets of dragon blood splattered through the air and dyed the ground red. "Take another strike of my hammer." Meng Lei quietly appeared above the golden colossal dragon's head with a slight sway of his body and gave it another heavy hammer strike. Crack! It was as though a great hammer had smashed into a watermelon, or a sledgehammer knocking an egg. With a crisp crash, the golden colossal dragon's head unsurprisingly broke apart. Howl! Amid a shrill and miserable dragon roar, the dragon's nearly 100 meters long body plummeted through the sky and smashed a huge dragon-shaped hole into the square. Just like that, a pinnacle-level Saint Domain had perished. Old Ninth Elder. At the sight of that, the 9 remaining golden colossal dragons roared furiously. Their voices were like rolling thunder, their wrath like violent winds and torrential waves, and their killing intent like the howls of the mountains and the roars of the seas. "You bastard! You evil creature! You knave! Return the 9th Elder's life. Don't be anxious. Everyone gets their own share." With a laugh, Meng Lei appeared right in front of the second golden colossal dragon like a specter and smashed his hammer down again. Howl! Then it was the third golden colossal dragon, the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th. All of them received 1 strike each, fair and square. Everyone got a share each, not a single one receiving more or less than that. Boom! 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 For a moment there, it began to rain pork dumplings, no, dragon dumplings. 9 out of the 10 mighty, awe-inspiring golden colossal dragons roaring furiously into the sky just now had fallen onto the ground. Then they became still and motionless and turned into dead dragons. How did that happen? Frederick the 32nd had totally broken down. Yet now 9 of them had died in such a short time. Who would be able to accept that? Nobody at all. How did that happen? Emperor Frederick the 32nd had broken down completely. No matter how he thought about it, he couldn't understand why Meng Lei, who was just 16 years old, was that strong. He killed pinnacle-level Saint Domains as if he were just slaughtering livestock. Just how did he manage to do that? You're the only one left now. With the hammer of destruction hoisted over his shoulder, Meng Lei looked at the longest golden colossal dragon and asked, "What's your preferred manner of death?" You've actually killed 9 of the elders." The Grand Elder was shaking as flames of wrath and hatred burst forth from his eyes. Amid his fury was, however, a hint of alarm and fear. Although the other 9 elders weren't as strong as him, they were nevertheless still pinnacle-level Saint Domains. Instantly killing pinnacle-level Saint Domains? He absolutely wouldn't be able to do that at all. And yet, Meng Lei had managed to. What did this show? It showed that Meng Lei was even more powerful than him and even stronger than a limits-level Saint Domain. A half-deity. Only a half-deity would be stronger than a limits-level Saint Domain. The moment that occurred to him, the Grand Elder couldn't help but bellow in a deep voice. "Sir, by acting in such a way that shows no regard for authority, don't you fear the Dragon Island's half-deity's punishment? That's my business. I don't need your unnecessary concern about that." Then, Meng Lei suddenly laughed and added, "But if you want to worry about something like that, I can give you the opportunity." "What are you intending to do?" the Grand Elder bellowed in a deep voice. "I've always had a dream, and that is to roam the heavens while riding a colossal dragon. In the past, I was too weak and could only dream about it, but that's no longer the case now." Meng Lei gave him a leisurely smile and said, "Although you aren't a pure-blooded golden colossal dragon, you're not that far off either. As long as you form a master-servant contract with me and become my mount, I can spare your life." "Form a master-servant contract with you? And become your mount?" The Grand Elder was so furious that he was shaking all over. "Sir, what you're doing is trampling on a colossal dragon's pride. The prideful dragons will never let you off. So you're not agreeable to it? Die then." With an icy snort, Meng Lei came right up to the Grand Elder with just a step and swung the hammer of destruction down. "No!" The Grand Elder's eyes were widened to the point of splitting. Yet he nevertheless couldn't dodge the hammer of destruction smashing down heavily toward him. Crack! Under the hammer, the limits-level Saint Domain Great Expert was no different from the previous 9 pinnacle-level golden colossal dragons. With just a strike, the hammer blasted his head apart, too. Boom! The enormous dragon carcass plummeted onto the ground, causing an intense tremor to go through the ground before everything returned to peace and quiet. In spite of that, no one was feeling any peace and quiet in their hearts. In fact, all of them had already lost it. Dead? He's died just like that. Even the limits-level Saint Domain Grand Elder is dead? 9 pinnacle-level Saint Domains and 1 limits-level Saint Domain have died just like that? A devil. He's the devil himself. Oh great dragon god, hurry and save your pious descendants. And now, it's all of your turns." With the hammer of destruction hoisted over his shoulder, Meng Lei gazed at Frederick the 32nd and the many other Saint Domains, nobles, and officials. "Guards! Guards!" Frederick the 32nd was as pale as a sheet, so frightened that he was shivering all over. Which part of him even looked like a sovereign now? "Now, no one can save all of you anymore." Meng Lei had a calm and tranquil look on his visage as he asked, "The higher management officials of Dragon God Empire are all here now, right?" Frederick the 32nd's voice trembled as he asked, Meng Lei, what exactly are you planning? Be clear about it." Meng Lei gave him a calm smile as he replied, "Wiping all of you out at once. Wiping all of us out at once?" Everyone's countenances changed greatly. Divine technique. Absolute zero. With a flick of his fingers, a golden, chilly air current burst forth and spread forward. "Run!" Everyone's insides were close to rupturing from fear as they fled madly. However, the golden, chilly air current was even quicker. In the blink of an eye, it had spread outward and enveloped the entire square. Creak, creak, creak. All that had stood in the chilly air current's path became sealed in ice. From Frederick the 32nd to every high-ranking official, all of them were frozen to the spot. Then they turned into golden ice sculptures. Everyone maintained a pose in the midst of escape while looks of alarm and fear also remained on their faces. In this instant, everything had become frozen in time. Flee? How laughable! Meng Lei walked into the crowd of ice sculptures. A sculpture fell onto the ground with a light tap, and then, with a loud crack, it shattered into ice chips. Meng Lei, stop that. Hurry and stop that. They are all higher management officials of the Empire. You can't kill them all. President Fred, the Fighting Dragon Academy president, and the other 4 who hadn't been sealed in ice, stared hard at Meng Lei. I know what I'm doing, presidents. Meng Lei shook his head lightly and pushed the second ice sculpture down. Then he went on to the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th. By the time Meng Lei had walked from one end of the square to the other end, 99% of the ice sculptures had broken into bits and pieces. Only about a dozen vivid-looking ice sculptures were left standing, and all of them were pure-blooded humans. Meng Lei released them from Absolute Zero's hold. The dozen or so humans that had been unfrozen watched Meng Lei with fear and trepidation on their countenances. In particular, upon noticing the broken fragments littered all over the ground, they became even more frightened, so much so that their insides were close to rupturing from fear, and they were scared witless. Dead? They're all dead? Oh my God! Meng Lei's gaze swept across them. Then, he turned and walked toward President Fred and the other 5 Academy presidents. Look at what you've done, Meng Lei. You're in deep trouble. You've totally stirred up a hornet's nest. The Empire will never let you off, and neither will the Dragon Island, not to mention the Dragon God. Fred and the others were terribly distressed. Then let them come. Meng Lei flicked his fingers as he said, I'll kill one if 1 comes, and if 10 come, I'll kill a dozen. If all of them come, then I'll just kill them all.
Meng Lei.
Fred bellowed deeply. Why have you become like this? How can you let down the spirit of the deceased President Amos? No, you're wrong. Meng Lei gazed at President Fred as he replied, If OL President knew about everything I've done, he'd only be happy for me. I know him better than you do. He doesn't belong to the dragons, much less sworn allegiance to that bunch of rotten, depraved nobles and that so-called golden colossal dragon emperor. Therefore, OL President wouldn't be angry over those guys' deaths at all. On the contrary, he'd support me instead. At this point, Meng Lei sighed and added, He knows what I want, and he knows the reason why I've done all that. He knows why I have to do so. What are you planning on doing, Meng Lei? Fred shouted hoarsely. You've killed His Majesty, you've killed all the high-ranking court officials, you've killed all the officials and nobles, and you've killed a good half of the Saint Domains in the Empire. Tell me, what exactly are you planning to do? Meng Lei gazed into the distance, and then he slowly replied, President, I've become a half-deity. Then he left without a second word. A half-deity? Fred and the others were astounded. Despite having witnessed Meng Lei go on a killing spree and instantly kill a limits-level Saint Domain, thereby realizing that he might already have entered that unfathomable realm, having Meng Lei personally admit to it to them nonetheless still astounded Fred and the others to the extreme. A half-deity. Meng Lei has attained half-deification? Oh my goodness! He has actually attained half-deification. It was only after a substantially long while that the 6 of them finally got over their astoundment and regained their senses. In a low voice, one of the Academy presidents said, While attaining half-deification is certainly astounding, can he act so recklessly and brazenly just because he has attained half-deification? What kind of position would he be putting the Dragon Island's Grandmasters in? Exactly. Does Meng Lei think that he doesn't need to fear the few Grandmasters just because he has become a half-deity? That's too egotistical of him. I don't know whether he's being egotistical or full of himself or not. But Meng Lei definitely isn't just purely killing people for the sake of it. Fred's voice trembled as he said, This is him fighting for power of faith. He intends to fight for the power of faith. Fight for the power of faith? A huge jolt went through everyone. Killing the emperor, slaughtering the empire's higher management. With that, one could say that he had thoroughly offended the dragons, the Dragon Island's half-deities, and in fact even the dragon god. This appeared to be an extremely rash, foolish, and irrational act. But in truth, of course it wasn't, because in just that brief amount of time, Meng Lei had already received rich, handsome rewards. Wealth, 2,583 laws of nature origin crystals after killing over 1,000 saint domains. He had earned a net profit of 2,583 laws of nature origin crystals. Was this transaction worth it? There was no doubt about the answer because this many laws of nature origin crystals was enough for him to do a lot of things, such as raising the god-slaying rat bloodline assimilation rate to 100%, such as raising the golden god-slaying ant bloodline assimilation rate to 100%, such as redeeming 25 power of divinity droplets, and such as using the limitless pickup function 2,583 times. Pray tell, compared to such rich, handsome profits, what did offending the dragons even count as? What did offending the Dragon Island's half-deities even count as? Should they dare to attack him, he'd kill them all and turn them all into laws of nature origin crystals. As for offending the dragon god, Meng Lei remembered that OL President had once said this. Deities that had already left Heaven's Vault continent couldn't descend upon the continent in their true form. At best, they could only send a divinity projection, and divinity projections could only utilize a half-deity's level of strength. Meng Lei had no fear of half-deities. After all, an adult god-slaying rat at 100% bloodline assimilation rate could eat a deity. Therefore, while it might appear rash, foolish, and irrational, it actually wasn't at all. With this many laws of nature origin crystals, nothing in the entire Heaven's Vault continent fazed or frightened Meng Lei anymore. Since that was so, then why not fight for the power of faith? It was exactly like what Meng Lei had told President Fred. I've become a half-deity. The underlying meaning behind those words was, I've become a half-deity, so I need worshippers. And where were his worshippers going to come from? The Dragon God Empire, of course. For the sake of obtaining the huge piece of the power of faith cake, known as the Dragon God Empire, he needed to get rid of the old religion. Was there a need to leave the emperor and the empire's higher management alive? The answer was clear and definite, of course not. Now that even the emperor is dead, surely the Dragon Island's half-deities will be infuriated? It's best if all of them come over. If I can kill them all, I'll be able to bring the empire under control with peace of mind. Meng Lei made his way over to the Dragon God Tower while he thought about all that. He wanted to continue earning money in the Dragon God Tower. The Dragon God Academy was as quiet, peaceful, and harmonious as always. Students were doing whatever they should be doing, completely unaware that the empire's higher management had all been slaughtered. Neither did they know that an unprecedented storm was about to sweep through the entire empire. Enjoy the last moments of peace quietly, children. Upon reaching the Dragon God Tower, Meng Lei strode forward and entered. In no time, he arrived at the 41st level. The Saint Domain magical beast on the 41st level was the Heavenly Bladebug and was roughly a mid-level Saint Domain. Meng Lei casually killed it and then he continued to head up. The 42nd level, 43rd level, 44th level. The 52nd level, 53rd level, 54th level. The 62nd level, 63rd level, 64th level. A half-deity's strength was not to be resisted. Meng Lei advanced with a crushing force. It didn't take long before he surpassed the top-ranking Timon Barton and arrived at the 79th floor. At the same time, his ranking on the Dragon God Genius ranking also rose to first place, triggering a huge commotion.